Let's see. Okay, it looks like now it's going. All right. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all again. I'm going to check to make sure everything's working good. Been a few little changes to the streaming system I use. Nothing major except for one show, but got that resolved. But I want to make sure before I do too much that it's working okay. So in a few minutes, I'll do something similar to last show and have you verify the delay period for me. Otherwise, we'll get to our show. Looking forward to spending a couple hours with you guys and just talking about things in a way that I hope will be beneficial and helpful to you and anyone else you may discuss these things with. We're going to start out right after I do this the delay check. We'll give people a few minutes to join as well. Once we verify the delay, we'll talk a little bit about just stuff that's kind of like for Christian witnesses of Jah. Well, it could be for anybody, but I'm going to be speaking directly to you using the master, okay? We'll do that real briefly. It won't take long. Well, it may take like 10, 15 minutes, but either way, it'll be worth it. And then from there, we're going to go into the subjects on the thumbnail, okay? So let me go ahead and just bring up the Bible Hub. I'm going to say hi to everybody as well. And then I'm going to do a delay check here. Okay, so let's do that now. And again, we'll start the show here in probably like within 5 minutes. We won't wait too long. Get right to it. It's our last live show of 2025. The last planned live I will have for probably 5 months minimum, maybe a little more. Now, as I mentioned the last few shows, if I can, maybe I can do once a month. I just will have time and I'll be like, okay, I can let you guys know. So, I will keep posting. Sometimes I'll post comments or articles and stuff. And, of course, I'll also let you know when I'm coming back. I'll post new videos that I upload. I will be uploading videos on things that I've meant to put up before and then from some of the recent shows. I'm going to reorganize the playlist so it's very specific to subjects and individuals that we have eliminated from the category of credibility, both modern and ancient times, because of their own bad teachings, of course. Not mistakes, not just growth and development, but a pattern of misinterpretation that just gets worse over time. So those types of people we've had to address. It's never a great thing. But you either address certain people who have blasphemed the Father, or you take your chances with him when he comes back, or when the Son does, in the glory of the Father. Yeah, so just remember that. Of course, we don't want to go chasing around all these abusive people. We have to pick our moments, right? We got to make sure we're the right people, and it's worth it. This is something that has to be done type of thing, We all have to make that decision. There's not like a very clear standard that applies to everyone other than the golden rule. And again, that is also situational because when we're dealing with blasphemers, perverts, and bad people, they're not the enemies, our enemies in the sense that the Romans were to Jesus who put him to death because they didn't know, like he said, right, what they were doing. Excuse me. The people who like to evaluate my face, right? Perverts we have. So weird how they are. They'll tolerate the worst kind of people and then run around and bother other people. These are adults, mind you. And never mind that I just, may have come out of the shower or shaven and used more. It's the kind of stuff, right, that we get some of these people and these fake religions, fake Christian religions doing to antagonize and harass people. Like these blasphemous perverts I'm mentioning. We all know it's unacceptable. It shouldn't be tolerated. And I'm someone who comes from kind of a Watchtower background, where it was tolerated, right? We weren't really supposed to. There were people that did some things, but nothing really public. In our modern times, until I stepped up and took the defense of our side on critical issues that I still do today, and I don't have any of the baggage that they still do today. We'll be talking about Watchtower, not in terms of just like a critical analysis, but the doctrine. Doctrine is going to come up because we're going to be talking about the great crowd, temple, We're going to get into Revelation 7 and 21, 22, fitting into the show, I think. We'll also be talking about 1 Corinthians 15, 24 through 25. Probably just those two are a little bit more, but they're pretty, you'll see why I'm picking those. It's not necessarily because of the Watchtower related connection, but it connects. So, and I will comment on that text in relation to the Watchtower's doctrine. You don't want to miss that. I've talked about it before, but I have a very, it's so clear, huh? Anyway, we'll get to it. And then we're going to talk about Christmas to start off, right? After the whole, when you get to Matthew 18 first, for you Christian witnesses of Jah. That's people like me. But anybody who wants to learn and follow the Bible, of course, it's a public stream and video. So while I may at times try to speak more directly to people who are like in my group of believers, people who share the same core faith of one God the Father, Jesus as the promised Messiah, the sent forth Savior from heaven, and the golden rule. Treat each other, love each other the way you want to be treated, loved. And again, there's a lot of individual decision with that because you have to decide how you want to be treated, right? Whereas with God and Jesus, that's just what the Bible teaches explicitly, and we don't add to it. We certainly don't go beyond what's written, like most fake Christian groups. But we also know that not everybody in all these groups is a bad person, right? I had some comments earlier today, I think from a Watchtower sympathizer, and that's fine. Of course, sometimes they come at us aggressively, and we're just trying to do the best we can, right? But there's a lot of misunderstanding, confusion, and people don't like the fact that I don't support Watchtower. But that doesn't matter if I support No Trinity or some other things, right? If you're not in Watchtower, even though they've changed, you're out. But the question the person was asking had more to do with, we'll get right to Matthew 18, but this is important. I don't want to have to bring it up later in terms of Revelation, the great crowd, so I'll do it now. Wanted to know basically, why do I think everybody in the Watchtower organization is going to be destroyed? Is that what basically, he was, from what I read of the comment, and I told him this, he's misrepresenting what I have said and say, and that is, he's saying, I think all Watchtower people, something I said, I guess, triggered him. And of course, sometimes I may speak in ways like I do with the pagans, right? All the Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant groups, right? We don't make wholesale judgments of every individual member of any of those groups. But like they do with us, right? We do say, no, you shouldn't belong to that group because they're teaching false doctrine. And it's serious enough to where we have to separate from them, or they condemn us, and we're not teaching anything but three things that are explicit, but we don't support these other things, these interpretations. So they hate us, right? We're as good as dead. I don't know what else you could consider hate, but either way, they'll destroy your family over it. Watchtower destroy your family over these things. Is that what you want? If you like it, go ahead. I know there's good stuff. You can be happy in Watchtower, as long as you don't take everything too seriously. But then how are you any different from anyone else in any other group, right? You can say the same thing. Well, Catholics just don't take all those statutes too seriously, right? Then they'll be fine. Or whatever. Of course, that wouldn't work for William, but the point is, I believe that every group is essentially a part of the dragnet that has been cast down to catch all kinds of fish. No one is good. This is one of the biggest mistakes, especially Watchtower people, but really everybody. We all make it. The master could tell us as directly as you could possibly be told. No one is good, right? I mean, how hard is that to understand, right? It's so amazing when you really think about the confusion over such simple statements in the Bible. We all think people are good. There's all these good people out there, you know? So when he asked me this question, his name was, it's in his username, right? He wasn't trying to hide it, Ralph, whatever, if it's real or not. Want to know, well, so do I think all these people are going to be destroyed? Well, no, I don't, because it's not because I'm judging individual members of these groups and saying, no, they're good. It's because what the Bible teaches is that we're all sinners. None of us are good. Therefore, the whole judging thing is really wild unless you're a clear blasphemer and anti-Christian personality, right? Person. That's a different thing. If you're a dragon member, you're a dragon churcher, you may be just a normal person and part of the dragon church. Dragon churches is what we call them. All these churches that tie themselves to Constantine and his rise and these creeds and councils and the merging of paganism, which had happened already, but now officially, and with these Roman gods and all this paganism and statues and ongoing, and just never stopped, right? It's only gotten worse since all that happened. It's dragon. It's the dragon dressed as a lamb, as we believe. Okay, but that's still an interpretation, right? Revelation 11 through 13. Now, it's based on behaviors they display, and they're acting totally opposite of the Christian way, right? Different God, different Messiah, all this stuff. Blaspheming the real ones. What, you believe in a real firstborn created Jesus, spirit born from spirit? Heretic, right? What, you believe the one God of the Bible is one person? Blasphemy, right? So it's crazy. And we have to live in a world like that. Why? It's not our world, right? We forget that too. It's not our world. We're not supposed to be liked. Now, we want to be, and we don't try to be disliked, but we also have to stand up when people just directly dislike us and attack us, like I was saying. They don't really have a choice, or unless you just let them have their say. And some of us just don't feel like letting that happen every day. Therefore, we all have to do what we believe is right and answer at the end of the day. Good or bad, whether you did something or you just fell away, right? Let's take a look at Matthew 18. Real quick, let's do a delayed check. How long have we been going? Right, so about 20 minutes in. That's good. I kind of got off, but so remember, no one's good. This is a big deception with Watchtower and other groups, right? You see all these people, and they seem really good. Oh, they do, right? I can think of a lot of people, many in Watchtower, who to me just seem like such great people. And I can't even, for some of them, of course, I don't know them perfectly, right? I wasn't related to them, but I knew a lot of really good people. People I thought of as self-sacrificing, you know. I pioneered in Watchtower and I did all kinds of things. I was very active in the ministry, right? So I was often with pioneers, even when I wasn't pioneering. I was doing all kinds of things, helping them. And they were great people, you know. They would give of themselves to you and do things. So now again, right there is the trap. No one is good, right? So should I change my doctrine and my whole way of life because someone I've known for a while and through these experiences came across as just so impressively moral? I didn't see them at their worst moments. I wasn't married to them. I didn't raise them, right? So we all know it doesn't matter how good you seem, no. Not unless you disagree with Jesus, right? I mean, so what's going on here? We really need to know, do you agree or not? Because we often, and we have to check ourselves. So in spite of the people I know in Watchtower in particular, to wrap this up, sound check, we're on. Good to see you all. No, I don't think everyone's going to be destroyed in all these groups. It's not for me to say who is and who isn't. I just believe based on the text, like the Dragnet, excuse me, and others, that people are called and chosen for reasons we don't fully know or understand. That's why we have to be really careful, We do. Because that's why the master said, right? That whole 7th chapter, it's like another clear as no one's good statement or teaching, and what? No one can do it, right? No one can remember, no one's good. And no one can stop judging other people unless they've done something against you directly or are such obvious blasphemers in a public way. You have to stand up or let them just keep blaspheming, right? Either way, let's do our sound check. I apologize. I want to make that clear, though. No, I don't believe that. I think the text in the New Testament especially teach us that there will be people from all kinds of groups that we just don't understand or know why, but the Father, the Son do. So we need to accept that and move on. It's not for us to judge anyone. We are here to confront people who are demonstrated liars, okay? And who does that? Do people do that frequently? Think about all these people in these groups. Like in Watchtower, I told the guy, I said, well, if these are such godly people, why do they support proven liars? You tell me, is that going to be enough for God to look at? If they're so good, Ralph, why are they letting people lie to them and others? I know it's hard, right? Because we're human, we're sinful too, and we see this kind of comparative goodness with other people who are just terrible. And we think, well, gosh, you think these people are going to be destroyed? I hope not. I don't think so, but there's a lot more going on here, okay? That's why it says in Revelation, and we'll read it later, and I don't want to focus too. I'm not here to put down people who have a hard time with staying. We're not all supposed to be like David, Look at David and the army of Israel. There weren't many brave people that day, were there? So don't feel so bad if you're not able to get out in front of everyone and face what appears to be an impossible opponent. It's not always your job. Your job could be another opponent that person can't face, and then this one. And not everyone gets to be a King David. And not everything worked out so great for him, did it? Why? Because no one's good, right? Especially King David. And yet, we were just talking about how, and see, a man after God's own heart, but he wasn't. We're in a tough place, well, to say the least. We're in a world where we're not supposed to be, but we are. So we have to try to be accommodating and accepting more than ever. But the dragon keeps us fighting. Really clever. And he gets us to be loyal to these proven liars. And once that happens, he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. You're following proven liars and you can't stand up to them. The master requires that you at least show the fortitude that he did to a point where you're willing to suffer for the truth. Okay? Can we agree to this, Ralph? You're not going to make it if you're not the kind of person who wouldn't suffer to some extent for the truth. And by the truth, I don't mean Watchtower. I mean the truth. I mean the master. And that's what you should mean too. Okay, so someone help me with the check, please. And we'll get right to it. So I'm going to ask you right now, please, to say, or put in the chat, the number 4. Okay, 4. Just write the number 4, or not write, type 4. Once I see a 4, I'll know the delay time and we'll be on our way. Thank you very much, Quest for the Christ and NZ Brandon. Okay, good. Well, I won't be doing a stream for a few months, probably, so I won't have to worry about these kind of changes, but I'll try to get it worked out. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the Bible Hub, where we'll be referring to. We're just going to read real briefly from Matthew 18. Okay, and this is a part, really just a brief part for the Christian Witnesses of Jah, but anyone, since it's a public live, welcome to listen. But if you're like me and you, since it's the last live for a while, I just wanted to add a little bonus. Then we'll get right to the scheduled topics. All right, and yeah, I still need to work on that. Okay, but that's okay. So let's read from Matthew 18. This is, well, let's go to, we've been using the New King James, so let's just stay there. Okay, so if there's an issue with the text or translation, we'll deal with it, but that's not likely to be a case here. Listen, and I'm going to read from this chapter, and then we'll talk about it. Matthew 18:1. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" You guys think about that. Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Does it seem to you like he's talking about like the kingdom that he's forming with them and going to be a part of, not like the kingdom in heaven now with the angels and everything that's already in place? I guess it's hard to say, but I find it interesting, don't you, that the disciples are asking him a question similar to what we ask and argue about all the time, right? Who's the greatest, right? Is the Father greater than I, right? We're still asking these same questions over 2,000 years. And they've been so simple and clear the whole time. We really have to be careful. The dragon is very good at lying. That's the one who's the best at lying. That's how he deceives everyone. It's very hard not to be affected by lies like we've been talking about. And what he does is he likes to keep resetting the question, because then it's like it was never answered. And then you just keep thinking about it over and over and over instead of acting on it like you know. It's difficult to break out of or stop when you see people doing that to you. But that's what happens. Look at Eden, right? It's the same thing there, and it happens all the time. The answers are already there. So they just don't want to acknowledge them because then they can keep lying, right? So then it puts the burden on people to actually find out what's going on. Not everyone's willing to do that. That's why these people are going to get a heavier judgment, because they're taking advantage of people who aren't used to having to do that to find out the truth. Verse 2, then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. Verse 6, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned into the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come. Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come. But woe to that man by whom the offense comes. Listen carefully. Verse 8, if your hand or foot causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. It is better for you to enter into life lame or maimed rather than having 2 hands or feet, to be cast into the everlasting fire. Now, what does he mean here when he says if your hand or your foot causes you to sin? What causes us to sin? Our desire, right? That's what James talks all about. So why does he say if your hand or foot causes you to sin? Because that's what we do things with, right? Our hands is what we use to do whatever it is we do that doesn't require walking, and our feet do the walking to wherever it is we want to go. And that is how we sin. That's how we accomplish the sin. In other words, he's saying it's better off if you just incapacitate yourself, right? Make it so you can't do or go where you go. That's going to be a problem, right? Because it's better if you stop yourself. Right now, this is where people who like to be very literal in ways that don't understand context or the culture and environment and or the broader text of the document and of the religious society we're dealing with, this is where they fall apart, right? How many people do you know who will quote texts like bridle your tongue and apply that to using language they don't like when that's not what that's talking about, like we've discussed last time? I have a separate clip I'll do of that, shorter. Very clear, though. And we don't want to go around using bad language unnecessarily. But we get people who will focus on that for texts like that they misquote. But then texts like this, how many of those same people are out there cutting off their hands and feet, right? I'd try a double donut, right? No, they just like to criticize other people for doing things they don't like. And you need to be really careful. You need to be really careful because both the dragon and people like him who are promoting these fake beliefs, false gods, and people they've damaged, the victims, you could say, right? They've made them into like professional judges of things that don't matter or that they get wrong, all while they're either not doing something equally clear in a way that if they're going to misunderstand those texts, well, why aren't they misunderstanding this, right? Because when it comes down to something really significant, they're gone. That's why. But it makes them feel better to do the other stuff that requires nothing. Just words that require nothing. So these people you need to be careful of, both Dragon Church members and, well, they're the victims of the Dragon Church, and then, of course, groups like Watchtower and others, right? Dragon is, he's flipped it on them. See, so they not only failed to do the things like I just showed you in ways that would be similar to what they're saying we should do in ways that they get wrong, but they'll support proven liars. These same people, I mean, this is going to lead us into Christmas, okay? So just hang, we're almost there. These same people will judge you over things that aren't either explicitly taught in the Bible or are clearly their interpretation of something taught in the Bible. And so it should be something we get to choose. It's not dependent upon life, and the master is the one we serve. So what are you doing, right? It better be really bad. You better be sinning against you. That's the only thing that you can bring that kind of accusation forward, or you're basically just being a Satan, right? You're just accusing people for no reasons. And usually to take that spotlight off yourself. But you need to be careful. They flipped it, right? Remember, look at Revelation 2. He praised the Ephesians for standing up to those who were taking the lead during the time before all this insanity. You're closer to the Holy Spirit, if not during that very time. Or what he was writing about, he was being given the vision. So during this very time, you had people lying about their position. And you had other people saying, no. You're lying about your position. It's just not what's written. It's not their teachings. You're not apostles. Fakes. You're liars. You say things that aren't true. And you keep doing it over and over and over again. And then you don't apologize and you say, no, we're true. We're the truth. No, you're the lie. You're the opposite of the truth. That's why you say that. See, you say one thing, but your actual history shows another. But they've been taught to ignore all that and to blame us for recognizing these problems and say, no, there's too much going on here for you guys to be who you claim to be. Right? Same with the Catholics, same with all these people. Right? The Protestant groups ruin themselves because they're still connected to the dragon. Right? They may have detached from the dragon churches in ways that are good, right? Obviously the statues, they do some of it, but they've made improvements beyond those groups, right? Those groups are gone. That's full dragon church. So that's almost exactly like Pharisee time. That's the dragon, right? It's just the Christian version of the dragon. But the Protestants tried to, that's why he gets so upset at these divisions, right? He doesn't want to have this fracturing. So, and we get all this, he'll use it though, because he knows, right? He can get to people. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. People are being manipulated, okay? So when they see stuff, they don't understand how to interpret it, right? When you see this, how do you interpret it? Do you think he's really telling you to cut your hand and foot off? I guess if you're about to totally collapse and destroy yourself, yeah, it's better, don't you think, to lose a hand or a foot instead of your whole body and life? But don't you also see here that he's saying that your hand and your foot are what allow you to do and take you to causes you to sin in the first place? Or your hands and your feet aren't alive. They're not the one. So we know this. Or James wouldn't have taught us this, okay? So you either understand this from the master or you don't. Verse 9, and if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. It's better for you to enter life with one eye rather than to have two eyes to be cast into the hellfire. And what does your eye do? Does your eye make you sin? Well, we see things, right? So all of these body parts are facilitators of our desire, which is what causes us to sin. But if we didn't have eyes, we didn't have hands, and we didn't have feet, we probably wouldn't sin very much, would we? But we wouldn't be very useful to the master, would we? But he's saying, hey, if you're about to totally wipe out, right? You're about to go off a cliff and follow Sam. Just go ahead and that's when you do this right here. It's better to just, cut it off than follow a proven liar and pervert. Otherwise, these things, any Christian recognizes what he's talking about. And I just explained it to make it more clear in case it wasn't as clear. Verse 10, just a little bit more. Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. For the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. Now, let's take a look at the Greek text here. We'll go to I like to use the parallel interlinear to facilitate our group understanding, and I just think it's a better way to look at it. But everyone has their preference. Okay, so this is the parallel Greek mode of this Matthew 18:10. Let's go to 18:10. This is very important. Listen to this and watch. Right, so let's read it again. See not you despise. Kataphronesete. See not you despise one of the little ones of these. We'll come back to that word. I say to you that the angels of them in the heavens, continually, always behold the face of the Father of me, who is in the heavens. So what does this mean? See not that you despise one of the little ones. Well, if we go over to the far left and we click on the number, it takes us to the dictionary definition on Bible Hub. We can see that it is the Greek word kataphroneo. And it's a compound word, compound verb. You can see more of that right here. Combination of kata, preposition meaning according or against, and phroneo, think or mind. So to be minded against, to think against. When you hear the word despise, right, that was the translation and a frequent one of that term in this text. And when you think of despising someone, what is that? What do you think of when you think of that word, despise? Right? It's that kind of internal thinking process, isn't it? Like a degraded evaluation, really, is what it is. So if we look back at the Bible Hub and the examples, right, this verb kataphroneo, it only occurs 2 other times in the Gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then it jumps to Romans. So here's the one we were looking at, right? Matthew 18:10. And then the only other one in Matthew is Matthew 6:24. It's the same account that's in the other one in the Gospels of the 3 in Luke 16:13. So they're both, it's a parallel account. So let's go to the one in Matthew, because that was before what we read in Matthew 18:10, where Jesus said, we're not to despise, right? To think against, to be mindful against these little ones. Very serious about it. What is that? Okay, well, look at the other account, right? Despise was the translation. We talked about it. What's this other use of this same verb in Matthew's account? Matthew 6:24. No one is able 2 masters to serve, either for the one he will hate and the other he will love, or the one he will be devoted to and the other he will despise. That's that same verb, just different form. Not you're able, God to serve, and money. Okay, let's focus on this part. And it's used in a parallel sequence with hate. One he will hate, the other he will love. One he will be devoted to, the other he will despise. It's kind of an ABBA form. So we have here an account with the same verb where Jesus is saying, you can't serve 2 masters. You can't serve 2 lords. You're either going to hate one and love the other, or you're going to be devoted to one and despise the other. Okay, so these terms, hate, love, devote, despise, these show out in our actions, of course, but they're really thinking verbs, right? Or they're certainly, they certainly are used for how we think about things and people. We might think about how we feel about someone or something. We either love it or we hate it. Or we might feel obligated to something, devoted to it. Or we might feel like we have no obligation at all, right? Like almost an anti-obligation, right? Despise. Okay, so let's go back to this whole despise thing. So what does he mean by this? Well, the closest thing, as I said, was this whole paralleling in the way that he does with this other term. So you would see it as, in this case, similar, right? These aren't meant to, I don't think, be synonymous in the same way that love is not synonymous with devotion, but they do overlap considerably. And so they do give us some understanding of each other and how we use these terms and in what regard we consider things as loved, hated, or we devote ourselves, or we despise certain things. Right? So here's the hate term, miseo. It's in Matthew 5 a few times, Matthew 6:24. He uses it several times, right? Watch our like say love less, right? Hate, love less. It really is. You're supposed to, it's a rejection, right? You're rejecting someone when you hate something. And there can be degrees of hate that will bring about degrees of responses. But when you hate something or someone, you're rejecting them. Now, to the extent to which you reject them and what you're going to do to reject them, it can be considerably different. You can totally avoid someone, or you can want to kill them, right? Two extremes, or anywhere in between. But hating really, as I consider it and use it and see it used elsewhere throughout the text, you're rejecting, right? You see right here. You can see Matthew 6:24, the text we're looking at. Good to them that hate you, right? That reject you. If they hate you, they're not accepting you. That is a core aspect of the meaning for hate. Love your neighbor and hate your enemy, reject your enemy, but accept your neighbor. They're not, again, I'm not using them synonymously, but there's a large aspect to these terms that involve rejection, right? This despising in your mind, right? Can't serve two lords. You're either going to love the one or hate the other. You're either going to be devoted to one or despise the other, right? If you're devoted to one, you're doing what they say. If you're despising them, you're rejecting them. You're looking down on them, right? Looking away. If we go back real quickly to wrap this up. So remember, it's important to understand, because this is a very important text, right? We're back on kataphroneo, right? These are different translations, right? We got despise, KJV, despise, NASB. We read the NKJV. Look down, right? Despising, disrespectful. Think lightly. Think against. Right? That's very much a way to look at the compound meaning of the term. Disesteem, despise, think against. View down with a negative, hostile outlook. Thinking down, esteem lightly. Seen as insignificant or detestable. To treat with contempt or disregard, devalue. To depreciate, pay no regard to, show it by active insult. Okay, refers to someone holding someone in contempt, deeming them unworthy, hence despised. Now remember, we're talking about how Jesus described those who treat these little ones, right, children of his people, the most vulnerable. He's not talking about wolves, right? Or people selling money in the temple. No, he's talking about the little ones. So the people who disregard the little ones, they're in big trouble, you understand? Now, a lot of these groups, they do that, either directly or indirectly. They just don't, they treat them lightly, right? They treat them with contempt, insignificant. Now, it may not always seem that directly, but what do you think subjecting someone to proven lies is? This is where it gets real tricky, right? It goes back to Ralph. It goes back to all of us. How much are you willing to endure that you know is false, not true? If you don't think it's not true, I'm not talking to you. Okay? If you're totally convinced 100%, then just listen. I'm talking about the people who know, like the Ephesian Christians in Revelation, know their leaders are teaching something that's not true. and requiring you to believe it as if it is, or they're going to reject you, no matter which group. I don't care if it's Watchtower, Catholics, Ortho-Pagans. Right? With us, if you reject God, Jesus, or the Golden Rule as they're explicitly taught, that's all. Or you start opposing us, right? Otherwise, I'm talking about all these groups that have all this other stuff, and they've said all these other things that have proven not to be true, either doctrinally or prophetically or otherwise, morally, organizationally, just things that have made it a problem for you to be a Christian. Okay. If they didn't have these things, then you'd be more effective as a Christian. How much of that are you willing to tolerate and subject kids to, thinking that it's actually better for them to be subjected to that? What do you think is going to happen eventually? It seems to me like that's what he's talking about. Now, I think it definitely includes the more hostile, abuse of children, obviously. But this is a thought. Remember, I told you these are thinking verbs, right? See, thinking down, phroneo, esteem of these have to do with how are you looking at that person, that child, the little one. Okay? So the little ones are really getting pounded today because we're in confusion and fighting each other all the time, and we can't unite in ways that would allow them to gain a sense of confidence through our stronger presentation of beliefs. And that has an effect, and it takes younger people especially a long time to get to a point where they establish beliefs that allow them to kind of know their place in the world. We don't make that easy today. No, we make you go through groups that they make it easy in some ways, right? Because you get more association. There are things you get through these groups. There's no doubt. Even some good things, I would say. But they're ultimately lacing you and everyone there. Eventually, you're going to have to pay for all that good stuff you got. There's a price at the end of the day with every one of these groups that comes with those benefits. But in the Bible, in Christianity, in the Bible, there's no price you have to pay at all, other than what comes with being a Christian. The kind of rejection and persecution you get from that, from being a believer in Jesus, teaching about the one God, following the golden rule, not following the world, and you're with your feet and your hands and your eyes. That's going to be there. That'll always be there to more or less degrees. The other kind, though, with these groups that are part of the world in ways that are structurally better for you initially, they're going to make it harder for you later. And the longer you rely on them, the harder it gets. Because, for various reasons, one of them being the sunk cost fallacy. You just invest too much and it's too hard to justify leaving now, You'd really have to care beyond just a comparison of, it has to be them among all the people. This is not how it works, right? This is not how it's presented in the Bible, that they're the best of all the options out there, right? Which isn't true anyway. Either way, got to remember the kids, okay? If you've got kids or your own kids, they should be your main focus until they get to the point where they can function. Because if you disregard them, right? If you devalue them, if you think they're not being affected, let me tell you something. The people that make these movies and that are using these religions to differing degrees, I'm not saying they're all doing this the same way or all doing it like this intentionally. But they have people, right? They get in there and they take advantage of these kids. And the movies, we know that the gay community has produced a song with a bunch of gay singers saying they're coming for our kids. because they want us to like their perversion, right? That we're supposed to approve of their abuse. Excuse me? We let you do it because it's not our position to stop you. It's legal. But we're not going to lie to you and tell you you're not abusing yourselves, right? First of all, the fact that you're too stupid to see that is pretty wild. Secondly, we don't become liars for fags, okay? You guys are perverts. If you can't see that, you're stupid. We're not stupid for using our body correctly. Try taking an anatomy class and then let's talk about it, okay? Or physiology. Whatever would clue you into proper physical function. If you desire to misuse yourselves, like with anyone else, good for you. No one here is trying to stop you. We're just going to make it clear what you're about. Enjoy. So, no, you're not going to get to our kids. We're going to get to you and we're going to smash your faces in. You touch our kids, we're going to chop your dicks off, okay? And we'll shove them in your face. We're not playing around here. You let any of these people come near these kids. You let any of these perverts around your kids, you're going to pay, okay? If you're a Christian and you don't keep your kids away from these perverted fags who are out here trying to take advantage of your kids, or these religious pigs who are teaching your kids that they're something they're not, and then whether they're priests or elders, they get abused. And then these groups have to pay, what, hundreds of millions of dollars? And then they just relocate these abusers? All that money you've been donating to these groups just goes to pay for their abuse? You think that's how the apostles operated? Yeah, I didn't think so. So, in any case, whoever caused one of these little ones who believes in me to sin, would be better for him to a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to that man by whom the offense comes. We talked about that already, right? Yeah, we read it. It's good. That was important to reread again. So now let's talk about Christmas. So first, let me just check, right? Let me see you guys are okay on the comments. So I saw that HC 99, he sodomized himself, removed him out of here. I don't know, maybe he's a Catholic priest who's out there trying to find kids to abuse. Either way, right? I mean, remember, a lot of these groups are all perverted. The Catholic Church is primarily a homosexual church. That's where, all the queers go. And of course, their own people have disclosed that their priests are primarily gay. Well, that's who's running the show over there. All these gay priests. So you guys need to stay out of there, okay? Stay out of any place you see a statue, an icon, or you see people who want you to follow people who are proven liars, just walk away. Now, if you're already there, again, it's going to be hard. We'll talk about it more. But like I was telling Ralph earlier, and we were discussing a moment ago, just look out for the kids, okay? If you can stay in these groups, Watchtower, Catholic, Ortho-Pagan, whatever, and you can say, 100% certainty, you're looking out for the kids the way Jesus just told us to do, good for you. I'll just leave it at that. If you can't, if there's anything in you that says, well, wait a minute, I'm not sure I can do that here, I don't know what other answer you could be possibly looking for, right? Outside of the doctrinal. But let's just prioritize the kids for a while, because I think they're suffering from all this confusion, arguing, and perversion. And it's pretty wild. And it's just disgusting on all levels. I think more time needs to be put there. So over these next few months, I'd like the Christian witnesses of Jah in particular to just step back from yourselves a little bit and from all these pigs, fatzos, and liars online. Do what you got to do. But I would urge you to prioritize the kids for a little while till you can get a good read on who's at least got a sense of their place in the world and what they're supposed to be doing. And they have some sense of the life that gives life to life and therefore must be eternal. You don't have to make it too complicated. Just basic seeds that you water here and there, right? Focus on that for a while because I think it will pay off in the long run, and they're the most damaged right now. All these voices, right? Who needs demons, right? All these voices from the movies, radio, online, all these false teachers. I bet the demons are like, we can't get through, right? There's too many voices competing with us. Anyway, that's why they use Sam, right? He's just this blubbering mass that speaks perverted things. All right, so Christmas. Christmas is something that, groups, especially like Watchtower, really have a hard time with. Now, I have some videos to talk about it. I haven't done one in a while. We've talked about it at times. Now, I don't think we always need to just reread the same accounts. I'm happy to do that, and maybe we will. But on this Christmas segment, we've been going about an hour. So we can go up to about 2 hours more if we need to. On this Christmas segment, it really boils down to one thing, does it not? Right? It boils down to whether or not the person is practicing paganism, right? Christians, that's why we talk about the Trinity, all this stuff. Our whole point is that these are... Now, when we say, like, the Trinity's pagan, what do we mean by that? What do we mean by the Trinity is pagan, Oh, we mean it's not Christian, right? It's not the product of Christian thinking. Now they'll say, well, no, there were Christians there. Yeah, there were people who called themselves Christian, but who were actually teaching things that weren't Christian and who were not using the Bible and who were listening to non-Christians, including a pagan emperor, who helped redefine the God of the Bible with a new term and proceed to make gigantic idols of himself and arches with false gods on them. There's so many problems with those periods and those events. Now, when we say Christian, we mean like in the Bible, okay, the New Testament, the most accepted documents related to Jesus and his apostles, and the texts that were used to help establish them as the fulfillment of what was predicted beforehand. So when we see something that's not taught or that's against what's taught in those documents, right, because if there's something that's just not addressed, it's not in those documents explicitly, well, we really can't or shouldn't be saying anything about it, right? We should just leave it be and say what we think based on what is there and then let each person decide. So there are texts that we all know about, and we'll read one of them at least tonight in Romans, but there are many. Maybe we'll go to Colossians as well. That tell us we're not supposed to be making decisions for people on inward questions, where we're not supposed to be outside of the primary things that lead to life that I've already mentioned, right? God, Jesus, and the way that we're supposed to live. We carry on the teachings of the apostles that are all consistent with those, but that include more things that we also believe. And that in most cases are pretty clear to see what they mean. We don't have to figure them out, right? We know what certain things are and are not, like stealing, lying, murdering. Now, there are some things that get into an area where they're not as clearly attached to those teachings or prohibitions, right? So that's where we then need to say, okay, if it's not clear, if it's not like a very obvious thing, we can all see what it means. It's not like something we have to follow up on and then there's like multiple meanings. No, it's just very contextually, historically, and semantically clear. So there shouldn't be any argument, right? People create arguments about then that's what the dragon does, right? It's the whole point of things like John 1:1, all these texts. He's confused everybody, right? That's his whole strategy. It's a war. But it's not just always a fighting war, right? There's different horses that ride. There's different events that occur. There's different different tests we have to pass. They're not all the same. So there are things like Christmas that become like, okay, are they tests? Is this going to put me at odds with the Bible? Is this going to make me a bad Christian or a non-Christian? Am I a pagan right now if I go to a Christmas party, like on Christmas, and it's a Christmas themed party, right? They got the typical Christmas stuff today that may not be in the Bible, maybe some of it. Because remember, in the Bible, the birth of Jesus, we can read it, and I've read it in some of the shows I've done already on this subject. So, I think we could talk about things that we all basically know and read them only if we really need to clarify. But the birth of Jesus is celebrated in the Bible, right? So not only were his parents there, but we had the angels who were there. We had the Magi who came, gave gifts. There's nothing wrong in that whole depiction of events related to his birth. The only births in the Bible are not bad, right? That's a lie. That's just the Watchtower either being poor in their scholarship. Watchtower's had good moments. They've had good people. They've also had bad moments and some pretty stupid people, right? So they say things that are just like far out. Like they're in their worst state ever that I can see right now. They just don't have, they're totally different, right? They do not have the kind of people like they used to have, good or bad. This is a different time. And they don't care. And it's very obvious. So, they're trying to keep you guys stupid. The dumber, the better, right? They're going to keep, it's what it is. Either way, think of it how you want. I can see it. I know what it was like. So is Christmas pagan? Are we doing bad things when we do this? Well, so I just cited the account in the Bible about Jesus' birth that we're familiar with, and we can all read. So no, not all births in the Bible are bad. The birth of God's kingdom in heaven, right? Revelation 12, that's not bad. Our spiritual birth as new creations, that's not bad. The Watchtower says things, and they're just wrong. Like the Ephesian Christians, unless you're willing to look at these things yourself, then you don't really care. So going back to Ralph, all these people you speak about, I see what you're saying. I do. Why aren't they following what's true then? They're such good people, huh? People get confused, especially young ones, like I've been talking about. No one's good, though, like the Master talked about. And his birth is depicted in the Bible. All these other births are depicted in the Bible. I just listed off more good births in the Bible than bad births, Pharaoh and John. Why isn't Watchtower telling you guys these things? It seems like they don't want you celebrating things, whether it's Jesus' birthday or yours. And they're just highlighting elements about those that are wrong, while at the same time ignoring elements about them that are right and doing things that are wrong, like weddings, wedding rings. The kinds of weddings and rings and vows, those aren't in the Bible or based on the Bible. They're based on paganism, right? So what should happen in these cases where we have, we have things that aren't like, we're not told to celebrate birthdays, but like I said, there are more good birthdays in the Bible than not. And there's nothing wrong with using the day that's been chosen for Jesus' birth to speak about God, Jesus, and the Bible. I would think that, to me, that seems foolish not to take advantage of that. And Watchtower people say, well, we go out in service on that day. Okay, well, but people they're not bonding with you. They see you as not participating in the celebration of Jesus' birthday. Watchtower people say, well, it's pagan. Well, okay, so again, you guys do weddings, you do wedding rings, those are pagan, the way you do them, their origins and customs. You guys recently just changed the whole toasting thing. So you're doing that now. There's nothing that says, none of these people that I know or have met, I can't think of one person I know who celebrates Christmas to promote paganism, right? Now, they may be. So, for example, if they teach about Jesus as part of a Trinity, but that's because the Trinity's pagan, right? So the teaching about Jesus on that day comes across in a pagan orientation. But they're not like celebrating the day of his birth for paganism, right? They're celebrating it for the day Jesus was born. Yes, they have a pagan view of him, but they're not thinking about that. They don't think they do, number one. They don't think the Trinity is pagan. And they're not thinking of Christmas in a pagan way. They're not like, let's go be pagans, or there's nothing in their mind that's motivated by a pagan thought. Most people I know, they just have the wrong beliefs about things in the Bible that are celebrated on that day. And so it's like, not everybody really understands these things the way you do. So Watchtower people hear it all the time. They know they don't do these things. So to them, it's like automatic pagan, right? But people who aren't Watchtower and who see things like I just explained with the whole account of Jesus' birth in the Bible, they don't think like that at all. They're just thinking they're honoring Jesus in imitation of the accounts in the Bible that celebrate his birth. And they're using that to give him the honor and praise and help people believe in him. That's their basic motivation for the Christians of all denominations, right? Mormons, Catholic, Orthodox, anyone who celebrates Christmas. I'm pretty sure Mormons do. I don't know everything about Mormon celebrations, but so again, they don't have the same view of Jesus as we do. But again, so they're not, when they celebrate Christmas, all these groups, like I said, I don't think their motivation is the way the Watchtower people are thinking of them while not celebrating. So there's definitely this gap in understanding that's fed by the Watchtower leaders. They're trying to keep people from seeing Christmas as a good way to honor Jesus and teach about him in the Bible. They'll see it as a good time to reject honoring him that day, other than the way they teach the Bible, just like any other day. And they'll say that. It's just like any other day. But it's not really, right? Everybody views it differently. Even in the Bible, it's highlighted differently. People from the Far East come and honor him. There's nothing about it that's depicted in a bad way. So you guys are just wrong. Your Watchtower's just been using a false tabulation of the good births in the Bible and reading into the two bad ones, things that have nothing to do with why people celebrate birthdays, right? Paganism or beheading people. Most people are just trying to acknowledge someone for growing a full year and encourage them to continue forward in life. Watchtower people say, well, yeah, you're giving them too much honor that day. Watchtower people, do you realize how much honor you give the governing body and people who are elders? I mean, you guys are venerated. You guys are like the pagans, right? Nobody needs a statue or an icon. Watchtower has created living statues, right? There's a living icon. Same with Mormons. I have this I do know something. I mean, these aren't the focuses of my study, but I know the Mormons have a very hierarchical structure, layers of people, right, in different positions, right, and they just all the way up to the prophet. So same with Watchtower, all the way up to the governing body, right? You have these different layers of authority and responsibility. When in the Bible, these positions, they're like meant to make you a lower person, right? Like you're supposed to be washing feet. You're supposed to be doing more and barely making it kind of thing. Not massing these billions of dollars in properties. Wild, man. It's incredible. You guys better be careful. These people are crazy. You saw the master treated people selling things in the temple, right? It's going to be bad. You don't want to be around those people when that day comes. Trust me. So, I'm going to go to the Bible Hub here, but just the way you guys give attention to people in your own organization defeats this whole idea that we can acknowledge a person's date of birth and try to encourage them in a way that people don't really think of, like become puffed up with pride, right? They're like barely making it through most days at all. So they get one day where people acknowledge them barely, right? And it's not like everyone's getting like all this money. It's just like you get a couple gifts. Maybe if you're young, then you get a little more. You get a cake and some friends over. But, if you're an adult, what are you talking about, Watchtower? What do you mean all this attention and glorifying humans? No one's doing that. This is like bare minimum stuff that we hardly ever get. That is at least some way that we can show a person we care. And you want us to think that we're basically doing the equivalent of killing people, right? Whether it's Pharaoh or Herod. Maybe we're just trying to do the equivalent of how Jesus' birth was celebrated, or how the birth of God's kingdom was celebrated. After Satan was defeated, of course, because he took first shot at it, right? But we know how that war ended. So there's really nothing that I can see in any way, whether explicitly, like by a statement of text that says don't do this or that, or by relationship, right? The different birthdays in the Bible, births, celebrations, or just, thinking about it in general in terms of how we're supposed to be encouraging, not judge people, and help us get through life without looking at everything as some like poison, right? It's not. If you have the power of God and Christ in you, the Holy Spirit, regardless of the sins you commit and the failures you may make, none of that matters. You just move right on. None of this stuff is going to hold you back. None of the things people do, the customs they have. That's why Paul says, become everything to everyone. Well, what if you're in a place where they're celebrating something that has nothing to do with Christianity, but with their religions and views, but it's going to be viewed as disrespectful if you don't do it? How's that going to look towards your Christian religion? And it's going to make us look real stupid, right? And disrespectful. When Paul says, become all things to everyone, and no one's saying you're joining that religion, no one's saying you're doing anything but showing honor in a way that's acceptable, and you don't even fully know what you're doing. You're just being respectable in a culture and context and way that no one should be judging you over. You're not like preparing to join a new religion, right? So it's not like bowing down before like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And if it is, then you know how to act, right? So we are told to give honor to those who call for it. So in this day and age where Christians exist but are a part of the world, we have to make decisions, whether it's to be a part of a birthday celebration or a Christmas celebration or some other holiday. That's not something we have enough information explicitly to say is bad or good. In fact, the information is clearly mixed and, in my view, in favor of doing everything possible to honor Jesus in a way that we can get to other people without compromising our faith. No one's compromising the truth by picking December 25th. It's just a day picked for convenience because we don't know when he was born. So we just make that clear to everyone. We don't know what day he was born. We're only using this day because it's traditionally been used, and it's not invalidating the Bible because the Bible doesn't tell us when he was born. And the Bible does depict the birth of Jesus in a good way. So we just allow that tradition to stay because we don't know the day. So there's nothing to invalidate. And people want to celebrate Jesus on that day, which we think is great and want to use to help them do so in the right way. I see nothing but benefits and good things and ways that you could bring people together. Now remember, Watchtower is a family destroyer. They just are. I'm sorry, Watchtower people. Try leaving one day. Say goodbye to everybody. So they will destroy your family over things that are not taught in the Bible. Their interpretation, even if they're firmly convinced it's not taught in the Bible, or if it's just like very clearly not even a good interpretation, they'll destroy. So you have to follow 100%. So no holidays. You have to understand, you have to accept their prophecy, interpretations, all of it. Okay? Or you're destroyed. The family's destroyed. Everything's just everything you think is good is gone. The second you disagree with their ridiculous doctrines. I'm not talking about God the Father, not talking about Jesus. Disagree that they were appointed in 1919. You disagree with 1914. You disagree with the great crowd differentiation between the 104,000. We'll get to that later. The way they do, gone. You celebrate Christmas, gone. You celebrate your birthday, although you will see it's gone at this point for all the time up to here. They will, even if they change, right? There's no reinstatement. Hey, we got it wrong. Come on back in. Right? And who wants to come back after all that, right? The destruction. They're able to get their members to destroy their own family over things they probably will no longer believe and aren't explicitly taught, and sometimes are really wild and gone. That's why you have to be really careful. That's thinking less of these little ones, deceiving all these kids, right? Think of all the destruction, family moments and times that people could have had together, and birthdays and Christmas, and given gifts. We're told giving is better than receiving. Sharing moments of warmth and not being so distant from everybody else that we have to feel like we can't use this day at all. We can't be a part of it at all. Have our kids humiliate themselves, right? Even though it does build character, I had to do it. It would have been a lot better if I would have just been able to participate and make a few drawings and eat some food and listen to some songs and just share in the giving, right? Who cares? Then when they thought better of me, instead of as a weirdo, Watchtower guy who doesn't celebrate things related to Jesus. And for reasons that, again, as we've discussed, are not biblical. So to wrap this section up, let's just use one text. We'll go to Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 through 19. Let no one judge you in food or in drink or regarding a festival or a new moon or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of things to come, but the substances of Christ. Let no one cheat you of your reward, taking delight in false humility and worship of angels, like the Trinitarians do, intruding into those things which he has not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind, and not holding fast to the head, from whom all the body, nourished and knit together by joints and ligaments, grows in with the increase that is from God, right? Don't judge anyone in food or drink, or festival, or new moon, or Sabbaths. That's explicit. All those things are clear and elsewhere further defined and explained culturally, historically, and religiously in this context. So no one should really have a lingering problem with them, right? I mean, sometimes I think we allow ourselves, to just be confused by things that aren't true. And the problem is we then end up misleading ourselves and other people. So remember texts like Colossians 2, right? It's very explicit. So if you choose to have celebrate this festival of Christmas, a birth of Jesus on a day that we're picking for convenience, it doesn't contradict what we know from what is written and is consistent in terms of the celebration for his birth, in ways that we can use to show honor to him and to build better relationships with others and ultimately, hopefully, teach the truth, right? We take command, right? You get to do this. You get to decide who you celebrate this day with or your birthday with in a way that honors Jesus, is in accordance with the Bible, but doesn't read into these accounts something that's not there, right? No, you are going to answer to the Master. I'm going to answer. And I cannot see anything in celebrating his day of birth on a day chosen for convenience without contradicting the scripture and that is used to glorify him as in any way inappropriate. There's nothing I can see in these texts that suggests that. So we're going to move on to 1 Corinthians 15. I encourage you to enjoy this upcoming holiday. Do what you feel is appropriate. Don't judge other people. But don't be hard on yourself either. It's going to be hard if you're used to Watchtower thinking because they poison you, right? They don't want you doing these things. They want you doing their things. It's very clear now what's their problem. They're just not good people. No one's good, especially not them, or people who tell you to listen to them when they're not following the Bible. And you can see that very clearly, right? Sometimes it's a little hard, but if you look clearly, look carefully, it's right there, okay? Don't anyone judge you on these things. That's what they're doing. Well, what more do you need? Well, they're going to make it hard because you're going to lose everything, no matter how clear it is to see. So I hope that's been helpful. Let me actually take a quick look if there are any questions on birthdays or Christmas real quickly. Guys like those points. Okay, it all looks like you're in line with that. So that's good. And of course, if you don't agree, that's fine. You do not have to celebrate Christmas as a Christian witness of Jah. No one's going to judge you and think you're weird because if you're either damaged by Watchtower or you just think it's pagan, right? Maybe you do. Maybe you're convinced 100%. And if you're with Watchtower, you do, right? You just think it's pagan and you don't do it. Okay, well, fine then. We don't. Okay, we don't think it's pagan. I've already explained, I've explained before why. The birth itself is described and celebrated in the Bible, Jesus. The only two birthdays in the Bible are not bad, Pharaoh and Herod's. So no one is celebrating a birthday for themselves or Jesus to promote paganism. And if they are, we wouldn't be a part of that. I wouldn't be a part of a Christmas celebration or a birthday if I knew for a fact, like the person saying, hey, this is for this pagan, ritual and this pagan custom, and we're doing this in celebration of this, pagan belief. Then I'd be like, oh, well, I don't do that. I'll do it for this though. Yeah, I'll honor Jesus and not a pagan because Jesus is real and a pagan thing is not, right? In my view. So I would give that on. So if they're with me on that, on the whole, okay, either neutral or with me on, we're going to honor Jesus. Not everyone, some people just celebrate it and you might have to accept that they're not going to use it to honor Jesus, but they celebrate it in a way that's kind of neutral, not pagan. They're celebrating it for convenience too. So it's just more neutral. Well, then maybe you can kind of celebrate with them in a way that don't be too preachy, but just giving something, right? Just being a good friend to someone like that at a time that has to do with Jesus or something about him. You all often wonder how you can go about making new friends, right? And converting people. I would suggest you take advantage of these opportunities just to create sort of lower the guard a little bit. Maybe you there's too many fences between you and other people that you'll just have to be accommodating more so without compromising, okay? Accommodating without compromising. You can do that. You can give in to a good extent and then just pull back when it's like, okay, wait a minute. No, that's too much. And even if you cross the line a little and you actually did just pull back, people make mistakes. It's okay. But you got to be out in there trying at least and doing what you can, I think. So I'm just sharing with you my thoughts and how I deal with these things and looking at the text and then saying, okay, this is our way forward, right? We have our three main things. Everything else is between us, but we need to like be able to look at these things and figure them out so that we're not just left hanging. And so, okay, this is good discussion. This is how we can do these things. What you're supposed to do is be as accommodating as you can without compromising. And if you found that you compromised, real simple. Sorry, I got to pull back. I didn't mean to do that. It's okay to do that. And pulling back is a sign that you recognize you went too far if that's the case. Okay. So it's very important that you don't adopt this self-defeating mindset or this like self-punishing mindset. Like if you go to a Christmas party or something related to a birthday, if they did something or have something there that's not like 100% in line with how you would do it, very important, unless they are clearly compromising in a way that's like unacceptable, be accommodating, because they don't know that. Unless if you know they know, like I said earlier, then that's different. If they're just someone trying to celebrate something that's religious or a birthday for them in a way that you can tell they don't really understand certain things, but that they're not good things, you're going to have to be accommodating and understanding. You're going to have to try to just deal with it, because you're not supposed to be judging other people in a way that's going to, while it may make you feel better, they're not inviting you there to project on them, right? Maybe if you see something and you can take advantage of it in a way that will be helpful, well, that's up to you. But I'm talking about like just, you not got to think of planting and watering, right? It's a process. Not everything happens at one time. Very few things do, in fact. Sometimes they can spark a good interest initially, but you really, you can overwater really fast if you're not careful. And I would encourage you to just try to be more of a situation manager, where these holidays and birthdays come up and you're like not fully sure what to do yet or how much you can get involved. Just become a situation manager and deal with it, right? Just know going into it, this is not going to be 100% in line with what I'm hoping it will be. Look for the good, avoid the things that you don't think they're going to cross the line, and then just let people do what they do. They're going to see you not crossing the line. Sometimes that alone gets their attention versus you making a scene or saying something. So there's different ways to approach these moments. Right? These are not like things we have to deal with. There's special occasions. Chris is spending a little more time with it. It's coming up. People need to Watchtower people are very affected by these things. They have a very, very hard time while in Watchtower and then after, because they're demonized, right? These holidays and birthdays are literally like, if you do them, you are dead. Okay? That's how serious it is. But they're going to change. And they weren't always this way. It's just so crazy, I know. But while they're in this state of mind, you got to understand, it's not easy. Okay, if you think you can go to a Watchtower person and talk to them like I'm talking to you right now, think again, okay? It's going to take more. Now, maybe if they're listening now, they're just hearing, and so it's making more sense a little. Most are going to be a little more defensive initially. This is where you have to be really just let it go. Okay, plant a seed and just let it go, because Watchtower people, like with Trinitarians on the Trinity, well, Watchtower people thrive on holiday controversy and Trinity too, but right, they get very defensive very quickly because they have to deal with it a lot. So it comes up a lot. So they're like ready to raise the defenses on Christmas so that you don't think they're going to compromise themselves. A direct attempt on a Watchtower person who's committed is just foolish. You should know going into it that they're not going to change right away. They're going to think you're probably a little off for celebrating Christmas or a birthday. So feeding into that would just be a mistake. You should try to be a little more tactful and understanding, and then that'll help them lower their guard a little. And then you can kind of like be just normalize it a little. Maybe mention Jesus' birth in the Bible, right? There's only a few things you can say here that's not going to raise this paganism defense and make them shut down. Maybe the Jesus birth is probably the best thing to say. Hey, maybe when you get time, take a look at that account and tell me if you think that's something like Christmas that we do. I don't know. When you tell me, try to be just like, hey, yeah, you let me know what you think. Don't be stupid about it, but you don't have to be like a direct. You can be less direct with a person who's extremely committed to something like that. So 1 Corinthians, let's get to 1 Corinthians 15, right? What'd you think when you saw this? I know what Quest for the Christ thought, right? He immediately thought Trinity, stuff like that. Maybe there's probably some. Okay. Let me just check real quickly here. Yes, Cathese. I think that was a little small. He says, go crazy. Make up for lost Christmases in 2025. Whatever. Maybe. I think actually you will enjoy yourself if you just, it's going to take time for Watchtower people, but once you realize that you can do so in a similar way to like the birthday of Jesus in the Bible, you'll be more able to be like more festive, right? Remember, don't judge based on the festival, Watchtower people. Well, but you to learn how to be more festive, you gotta have to look at that account a little more closely. Think of that. That will help you to be more festive on Christmas, Watchtower people. Okay, so look at this though. What does this mean here, the end? I put that on there, right? And we know that says it here. So look at this text. 1 Corinthians 15, right? We were reading this the other day in our Athanasius show about the resurrection. But there's this part here. It's not about the resurrection here. Look. Then comes the end, right? That's what I titled this segment based on. When he delivers the kingdom to God the Father. When he puts an end to all rule and all authority and power. For he must reign till he has put all enemies under his feet. And then verse 26 says, the last enemy that will be destroyed is death. Right, and we know, as we'll get to in a moment with Revelation, in our last segment, this happens at the end of the 1,000-year reign. That's when he turns the kingdom back over to God the Father. So, now with Watchtower, there's one thing I'll mention real quickly before I get to my main point. And this is going to take us right into our last segment, which is going to be about the great crowd and the future blessings and then serving in God's temple and what that means. This right here, though, I have a video on this, 1 Corinthians 15, 25 in particular. But it's really involving, all these verses. But this verse here, the reason this verse is so devastating, Watchtower people, is the reason this verse is, in my opinion, the best verse to use to show that the Watchtower understanding of 1914 is wrong, is this verse, 1 Corinthians 15, 25, because Watchtower people believe that when Jesus died and was resurrected, that he sat at God's right hand in fulfillment of Psalm 110:1 until God placed all his enemies beneath his feet. So Watchtower believes that means that there's a period of time from when Jesus was raised to God's right hand until all his enemies were put beneath his feet, and that period of time is from being resurrected to 1914. So Watchtower people believe that Satan was thrown down in 1914, making all of Jesus' enemies now beneath his feet, and that he then began to rule from 1914. But this text right here says he rules until he has put all enemies beneath his feet. He doesn't rule after all enemies have been put beneath his feet. Psalm 110:1 just says he's at God's right hand. Remember, Revelation 3:21 says he's on his throne and the Father's throne. And so are we. We sit down on thrones, Revelation 20, and we sit down with him on his throne, which is on the Father's throne. So just because it says he's at God's right hand, that does not mean he's not on the Father's throne. He's on the throne at his right hand, on his own throne. Again, we're using what the Bible says is the case, but it's metaphysical. That's the only way it can represent it. But either way, so Watchtower has that wrong. They think he's not ruling until all the enemies are put beneath his feet. This text right here says he rules until they're all under his feet, and that the last enemy that gets put beneath him is death, which happens at the end of the 1,000 years, which is how long he rules, right? And then it says right there, as we read, and we read before, he then turns the kingdom back over to God, who becomes all things to everyone. So he does rule the whole time, Watchtower people. From the time he was resurrected and sat at the Father's right hand and sat on the Father's throne, on his own throne, just like he told John, and through John the congregations in Revelation 3:21. He's telling them what he's already done. He's talking about him being in heaven, doing these things, and how anyone who conquers can do the same. He's literally talking to those people in the first century, telling them if they conquer like he did, they're going to sit where he's sitting. And he's ruling the whole time. The fact that he's at the Father's right hand doesn't change that. He's still at the Father's right hand right now, on his own throne, on the Father's throne. So he rules until they're all beneath his feet, not after they're all beneath his feet. This is another thing where Watchtower really blew it. They got it completely wrong. They got the whole Daniel 2:44 thing wrong, because it has nothing to do with anything but Nebuchadnezzar and the periods of time that passed from which he was thrown down to which he would reign again. There's no connection with the Gentile times in Luke or anything having to do with Jesus being enthroned. And it's very clear that regardless of whether it does or not, that happened in the first century when he was resurrected, because he has to rule until they're all put beneath his feet. And the last one is death. And so unless he's not ruling, right? And he's going to only rule after death and contradict everything about the end of the 1,000 years? No. So Watchtower people, I mean, I know it's hard, but it was hard for me. I had to step away, Watchtower people, with my family at that time and be shunned by everybody pretty much. And with the few people that would still talk to us weren't the same. And I had to have everybody in the witness scholarly community basically, reject me, start lying about me, saying all kinds of whacked out things. All because I didn't support what you guys teach anymore. That's clearly wrong. Not because I want it to be or think it is or interpret it is. It is written. Boom. Right? You say one thing and what's written says another. That's why you guys lie about me. That's why even today you've got people out there who just keep lying and misrepresenting things. People that are not good people and who are themselves liars, but they're so upset that I won't rejoin your destroyed organization that you all did this to yourselves. You guys are the ones who destroyed yourselves with this false teaching. You just were able to do it in a faster period of time than the Dragon Church or Mormons or other groups because you put an expiration date on your interpretations. One too many, at least. Either way, this is clearly wrong, so you guys are condemning us for something clearly wrong, just like the Trinitarians, but in a different doctrinal way. But with that having been said, this right here, then comes the end, right? When he delivers the kingdom to God the Father. So, the end. What do you consider the end to be? Like if someone said, well, when is like the Watchtower says they like to use the terms this system, the system will end, or people will say the world, What do you think that means? Next comes the end. I think a lot of people, and tell me if you disagree or not, a lot of people, when they see this, they think of like, the end, like as the Matthew 24:14 or the Armageddon end, But it's really not talking about that, is it? It's talking about like the end, like the final end when all badness, all death, right? Death is really, when death is no more, badness will be no more, because what leads to death? Sin. So this is like the end of the 1,000 years. And we usually understand it that way. But I think even though we see this text that way, 1 Corinthians 15:24, I think most of the time when we talk about the end, we're talking about Armageddon, right? But no, we've got a great tribulation that leads into Armageddon, which is the destruction of this world, and then the bringing forth of a new earth and a new heavens, right? That's how the Bible presents it. We're going to get to it in a moment. And then a group of people is approved by the master, right? All the nations are brought before him, Matthew 25. And he separates the sheep from the goats. And he says, the sheep come, enter the kingdom, prepared for you from the founding of the world, because you took care of my brothers when they needed you. And they have no idea what he's talking about, right? Because they didn't realize they were helping Christians when they did that. Whereas everybody knows, in the Watchtower who they think Christ's brothers are, right? It's so weird. The very account they use makes it clear that they couldn't possibly be those people. And then the goats, he says, you're going off into destruction because you didn't help me when you didn't realize it was me. And then, so the group that he approves in Matthew 25, the sheep, right, differentiates the sheep from his brothers that they don't even know about. They don't even know who they are. But that's why they're being approved, because while the wild beast is persecuting us in Revelation, right, trying to make it hard for us to buy, sell, and do all this stuff, some people come to our aid and they help us out because they see in us things that, according to the law of their heart, they act upon in a way that the master approves. And he credits them, right? It's like the thief that died with him, but who came to his defense against the other one who slandered him. Something like that's what happens, right? There are people who are willing to come to our aid while we're being attacked by the beast, the dragon. The master rewards them for that. They're the nations, just like that account says. We're not going to read Matthew 25 because, again, we all know this. To save time, I'm going to paraphrase the ones we're really familiar with. But let's go to Revelation 7. Let's move into our final segment, everyone, and then we'll wrap it up here. Last live show of 2025. last live for probably 5 months, unless I can slip in a live here or there. I'll be doing posts and I'll be uploading video clips from helpful video segments. But I've got a lot of work and educational pursuits that are going to tie me up until late May, June. I'll be back in the summertime for more regular shows. But this is going to be for the next few years. So I will probably be able to integrate more, like less frequent, but regular, like once a month type live if I can. But no promises for right now. Let me keep going. I don't want to overload myself. There's a lot I have to do, a lot of time I have to devote to studies, and then also make sure I get my work and everything else done and all this other stuff. So I have to not overcommit myself until I'm absolutely sure I can make this work and still achieve at the highest levels that I want to. So either way, though, we're going to have a good time. You guys just keep doing things, right? Stay focused. Remember what I said earlier about the little ones. Watch over them. You can do that. You will reap the benefits later. You spend time now helping these little ones deal with life with all this insanity going around. Try to keep it simple, but substantive, right? That's what we do. So just try to focus on like core facts, not like things that aren't as significant. The weighty stuff, right? Archaeology, credible things from history and or the Bible, morality, teachings that make sense, scientific explanations, right? Little things like that in the appropriate context, they do more, especially for young ones as they grow, formulate ideas than arguing about the Trinity, right? Maybe people who are really religious and they're young, yeah, that stuff might fit in better. But most young people who haven't figured out things or even gotten on the path to argue about God, no, you have to back off of all that and just get into the more fundamental elements of life and teaching that will help build the blocks of faith they'll need as they grow. We're losing a lot of this because our teachers are terrible. Our leaders are terrible. Our religions are terrible, right? It's the world of dragon. So we're not going to have a beneficial path to all of these things most of the time. If you have a good family, and you have some good friends, and they've been tested and you kind of know, it'll be a little easier. But otherwise, you need to be careful. Don't get so close with people, especially if you don't know them. That's a huge risk you're taking there, especially with the way the dragon likes to deceive people. Right? You'll just be setting you up and for disappointment most of the time. But if you know the person, right, then you won't be as disappointed because you know who you're dealing with. But some people lie a long time. Either way, Revelation. So let's go to Revelation 7. We're going to wrap this up here. Read a few texts. We're using the New King James right now. Okay, so I don't think I said hi to everyone, did I? Let me do that real quickly and we'll finish up. Last section coming up. Unfinished Mystery. Good to see you. Quest for Christ. Very nice. Appreciate all your help. NZ Brandon. Good to see you. Sahar. Pumped up as usual. And we saw HC 9090 collapsed. Ken Anderson, good to see you again. Faithfully Rational. We'll see. I don't know. They've been changing a lot lately, but it's not about their changes, right? There's just structural problems there that have been there a long time. Watchtower, he's talking about. They had their chance, if they would have changed things a long time ago, like especially after the 1975 thing, but if they would have stopped, if they never would have gotten to 1925 or any of the other crazy dates or teachings, and they just would have focused on what we focus on, God, Jesus, you and me, divine name, no Trinity. Tell me how good that would be right now. Tell me how good we would be as Jehovah's Witnesses if Watchtower hadn't collapsed and after 1914 failed, continued on the path of failure with 1925, 1975, the generation, and then all these crazy teachings. If they had just stuck with, everyone partakes, the nations are the people who are approved based on how they treat all the Christians. We're talking about more right now. And then God, Jesus, you and me, if they would have done, we'd be rocking and rolling, right? But the dragon got in there and started making them think crazy, right? Making them think they could figure out dates and times and seasons they're not even supposed to be writing about. Those texts aren't hard to find, by the way. So there were problems there. There were problems there. And now we see the results of those problems. So we give Watchtower credit in the same way we give other religions credit for the things they've done that are good for people and where they've had people that were more helpful than others. There have been different people in Watchtower, the leadership roles at times that have done more or less good. They're not all the same. Same with these other groups, right? So what the Catholics say, not every pope's the same. Well, that's true. So we can't look at them all as the same. We got to look at them in terms of how they act during that time and what they taught and what they did. So right now, Watchtower's in a free fall. Whether they can make enough changes or they have to become a whole new thing. And they would have to either become a whole new entity with whole new teachings or apologize, for all these horrific lies that they keep telling people for their own benefit and financial gain. So I don't know. I don't see it happening. I think it's going to be a collapse. I think they're just going to keep trying. They'll try to salvage as much as they can, Definitely. They'll try to salvage what they can. But not because they care. They care about themselves, If they really cared, then they would just try to make up for everything that's happened, These groups don't really care though. They care more about being where they are. Anyway, it seems like that. Charles, looks like Charles Sylvander. So he said JW's conflicting on what to believe. I understand. Don't do anything too quickly, but don't wait too long. Hopefully that helps. It's not an easy situation to be in. But it could be worse, right? And everyone who's ever read the Bible in a way that allows them to see the Jesus of the Bible, everyone who's done that knows believing in him has a price to pay in this world. It's just the reality of that price, regardless of what it is, isn't so nice when it finally has to be paid, is it? So there is no easy way, but maybe for some it will be a little easier. We can try. I want it to be easier. I want you guys to have I don't want anyone to suffer. It's not up to me. So I have to stick with reality, I have to do what's right regardless of what people might think. I can't soften it for one group and not for the other. It's got to just be what the master says and what I can see that he says, and that's just it. And I've had to go through things so I know this can be done. So I shouldn't be so accommodating to people like they can't do it, because they can. Probably easier than me, because I didn't have anyone. But in one sense, that almost made it easier, at least for me. But everyone's different. So let's get to our final reading, right? Glad I could help you, though. Don't quit. Don't quit. So we know about this, right? After these things I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth. Four corners of the earth, by the way, doesn't mean oh. No, it usually just means for the four main directions, like the four main winds that are spoken of, right? And that exist. Anyway, we got people. Holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth. In fact, how would the Bible writers have known about the four main winds of the earth? That wasn't something generally known in the way it is today. That, to me, is an evidence of inspiration, but, sometimes we overlook it. That the wind should not blow on the earth or the sea or any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 out of all the tribes of the children of Israel were sealed. And then we get a listing of the 12 tribes, which is more of a modified listing, a purified listing of tribes. So, how literal we're supposed to take this is not clear, right? We are in a figurative book, but it's not like every single thing isn't meant to be something literal. But we have to be very careful, especially in Revelation. And we know, of course, from chapter 6, right, that this whole numbering, while there may be a literal number, 144,000, it could also be that it represents, it's a figurative number, right? We have figurative numbers throughout the Bible, in particular Revelation. The number 666, right? The seven spirits, right? The seven seals, right? We have these, whether they're literal or not, they're used in a way that may not be. Maybe the seven seals in that are literal, events or things. So sometimes they're literal, but in other cases, like I mentioned, they're not, or they may not be. And so is 144,000, the way it's described here, meant to be taken literally? I don't know, of course, for sure, but my understanding of the text, and I do believe that I'm a Christian who's meant to understand this to the extent that it applies to things that I'm supposed to be aware of in my time, that the number doesn't appear to be literal. It appears to be figurative for a literal number. So like right here in Revelation 6:11, it says, so he says, he opened the fifth seal, he saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and the testimony which they heard. They cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, until you judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Then a white robe was given to each of them, and it was said to them that they should rest a little while longer, until both the number of their fellow servants and their brethren, who would be killed as they were, was completed. So clearly talking about the Christians who are sealed in death to a specific number. And then right after this, basically, is when we get to, like a few verses, the number of 144,000, right? 12,000 from 12 tribes. It seems figurative for a literal number, okay? And when I look at the way, I have a whole video on the 144,000. It's like 5-6 years ago, but it's still basically exactly what I would say today, because I go through the same texts that I'm thinking of now, which describe the 144,000, the way they're described here and in chapter 14. The things that are said of them, right, being virgins and all this stuff, is exactly how Christians are described in the New Testament. So the way they're sealed, being virgins in a spiritual sense, right, not being adulteresses, like being friends with the world, Paul talks just like that about them being presented as virgins to the Christ, even though many of them were married and or even homosexuals before becoming Christian. So he's not talking about literal virginity there, and I don't think it's talking about literal virginity in Revelation 7. I also don't think this number is a literal number, that's all. Primarily because of what I just said about Paul and James and others in the New Testament, all being described in the same ways the 144,000 are, but there clearly were more than 144,000 Christians from the time of Jesus through to today, if not all in the first century or shortly thereafter, but certainly through to today, all the wheat hidden within the weeds. You'd have a hard time, I think, arguing that there haven't been 144,000 Christians to this point. Maybe, right? We don't know because we don't seal people, right? But when you look at all the Christians who died, the people who showed faith in the early centuries, before all this before the dragon started forcing people to worship God through these pagan systems, a lot of people who died faithful, right? And people who still died faithful even during the dragon's period of paganism. So whether or not there have been 144,000 who have died and been faithful and sealed like that from Revelation 6:11 through to Revelation 7:8, it's not entirely clear from what we're given as it is written. But I think based on all the texts and teachings that I've just mentioned and summarized in the New Testament and the events from the time of the first century through to today, that we can come to a pretty good understanding of what the Master's talking about, that it seems like a number meant to represent another specific number. There's a reason for this number, the tribes, the number 12, right? The 12 apostles. There's definitely reasons for this symbology, significance, significant reasons for it. So, and I think that significance can be understood in the context of Revelation, but that the number itself really represents a different number. We'll find out though, right? All right. So watch that video, the 144,000 video. Excuse me. Watch that video. Just type 144,000, the numbers 144,000 at my site, my page. It'll come up. I'll try to link it below as well. For more on the 144,000. But I wanted to kind of summarize it because we're going to move into the great crowd and more of the 100. They're still here. But in terms of like this number, see that video for more information on the parallels between the New Testament Christians and these 144,000, okay? I don't think these are just Jews chosen from these tribes, like literal Jews. No, I don't think that. I think that New Testament teaching about what is a Jew and what is no longer a Jew, and who are virgins and who are not, and who are sealed and how they are, helps us answer this question. So let's move on. After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could number, out of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. What does that sound like? That sounds like what we were paraphrasing earlier from Matthew 25, right? We could go to it, but we all know this account. If you don't know this account by now, then you got to be brand new, right? We all know in Matthew 25, what? When the Master arrives, when the Son of Man arrives and sits on his glorious what? Throne. Isn't that what you have right there? The exact same thing, right? In Matthew 25. Here, we're seeing him address the sheep that he addresses in Matthew 25. The goats just aren't here. They're gone. Look at what it says. Who's gathered before the Master in Matthew 25? the nations. All the nations, right? The good and the bad. Well, what do you have right here? All nations. Now, again, based on their response here, I believe that he's just singling out the sheep of Matthew 25 for that reason. The goats aren't in focus here. The sheep are. But it's the same account. I believe it's the exact same account based on the parallels. I have videos on this too, but we can see it right here, right? We can see it parallels Matthew 25 almost exactly right to this point. And then from right here, this would be after he approves them, right? So after in Matthew 25, when he says, "Come, you have been approved. Enter the kingdom that's been prepared for you." That's this right here. That's them as they've entered the kingdom. So they're still before his throne. They're now approved. They're the approved sheep. They're the nations. So you had one group, right? We had one group right here that's sealed. This number from Revelation 6:11 at least forward that they're waiting for, right? They're waiting for this to be completed, for this number to be filled. There's definitely a number here. And then we get this symbology, right? We get this four winds, symbology for the trees, the sea. It says, don't hurt the earth, the sea, the trees, right? It may be literal, but it may be something else. And then it refers to this number who are sealed, that they're not hurting anything until they get this done, right? There's a period of waiting here. Like, don't cause this destruction until this is done. That's what it says, right? Don't harm all this stuff until these guys and girls are sealed. 144,000 of these 12 tribes. Okay, so we know based on my video and what we discussed in the New Testament text, those are the Christians. If you agree with me, and like I believe, and for the reasons I've stated and state, the 144,000 are us. That's us. That's the number of people that the destruction is waiting for to be filled. That's the number. Whether it's a specific number of 144,000, we are not told that. We're told enough. We're told this is a significant number. It is a number. And that these are the Christians based on all the parallel descriptions and their differentiation from the others, right? Because these are all from the nations. And that's exactly who Jesus talks about in Matthew 25 when he's on the throne and they're before him, like right here. And in Matthew 25, what happens? How are the nations differentiated in Matthew 25? From his brothers, right? Exactly. So right there, you're seeing the same thing you're seeing in Revelation 7. You're seeing his brothers right here. These are the servants of God. These are the sealed ones, the virgins in a spiritual sense that follow the Lamb wherever he goes. That's the Christians. Then, so we get the Christians here. And just like in Matthew 25, we get the brothers, the Christians there. And just like here, we have all the nations. Matthew 25, we have all the nations before the Lamb on his throne. It's almost exactly the same. The only difference is here, the goats aren't included and the sheep are in focus. They're clothed with white robes, palm branches in their hands, crying with a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." All the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the four living creatures fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, saying, "Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom, thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen." Then one of the elders answered, saying to me, "Who are these, arrayed in white robes, and where did they come from?" And he says, I said to him, "Sir, you know." right? So we already know where the 144,000 come out of. He just told us they come out of all those 12 tribes. The great crowd, though, right? It's like, okay, we know where the Christians came from because we chose them. And John, right? He knows that. He's not asking about them. So he likely, when he saw that vision, right, he's seen this sealing, this virginity and these descriptions in ways that he knows match them. He knows that's them. But then this great crowd shows up, right? All the nations. And then that's when he says, okay, well, the elder comes to him and like he doesn't know. He says, well, who are these people? You already know, the 144,000, John, that's you. Well, who are these people? He says, well, you know, right? So if John thought they were Christians, he wouldn't express confusion here, would he? If John understood the great crowd that was just described and that this elder's asking him about, he would say that. Well, they're Christians. They're just like me. No, he doesn't know. Whereas he doesn't express confusion about the other group. So then the elder says to John, these are the ones who come out of the great tribulation, and they washed their robes and they made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will dwell among them. And they shall neither hunger any more nor thirst any more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any heat. For the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne will shepherd them and lead them to living fountains of waters. And God will wipe out every tear from their eyes. Okay, we have a lot here, don't we? So he says they come out of the great tribulation, right? They washed their robes and they made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So he doesn't say that these people died observing the commandments of God and Jesus, right? Like he did in Revelation 6 and earlier in 7, he's talking about those who he told the people under the altar, rest, wait a little while until the rest of your brothers who bear witness to God and Jesus are killed as you were, until the number is filled and completed. So he doesn't say that about these, right? He doesn't say, well, these were killed just like you. They were bearing witness to God and Jesus and they were killed like you, John. No, he says they came out of the great tribulation and washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. And then for those reasons, they serve God day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne dwells among them. And they won't hunger or thirst. The heat won't beat on them. And the Lamb will shepherd them and lead them to fountains of waters of life. Okay, so why would all this be happening? And where is all this happening? And how are they serving God day and night in his temple? You may ask, right? So if you know, we're going to go ahead and I'll move it forward to Revelation 20. But before I bring you up to there, we're gonna read these last few chapters and we're gonna end it. Okay, you ready? We're gonna end on a powerful note with the promises that we've been given and that we hopefully have a clear understanding of as we read them together, God's Spirit. But so we know in these accounts, right? So we have the great crowd, the 144,000, the differences that we just observed. But then we see that they're going to be serving God in his temple. And many non-witnesses and people who disagree with them and their understanding of, their understanding of the great crowd and ours is not the same, okay? My understanding, this isn't required Christian witnesses, like you have to believe this about these applications of prophecy. I think they're reasonable and sound. Unless you have better arguments, I'm going to keep going with them. But, we only require 3 things, and interpretations of prophecy is not one of them. So as long as you're not presenting something completely off, you're allowed to think what you want. But to me, right, so Watchtower believes that the great crowd are Christians, that they're the people who are basically the majority of the organization and have been for a long time, since the 30s at least, and 1930s. So Watchtower believes that they're Christians who are not anointed. They're not like Christ's brothers in the sense that they're going to rule and reign with him from heaven. They see that as the anointed Christians. But they see this other group, the great crowd that we've been reading about, as Christians, but they're not anointed in the same way. They don't partake of the bread and wine, and they're not going to go to heaven and rule as kings and priests. We don't see it that way. We see every Christian believer as an anointed Christian, as one who should do every single thing Jesus says you should do according to your abilities, means, and calling, including partake, and that you are going to rule with him from the heavens, but over the earth in a way that's described for us like we're going to read in a moment. And that there are going to be a great crowd of nations of people who are not Christians initially, but because of the way they treat the Christians, Christ's brothers, Matthew 25, they're accepted into the new earth. And they wash their robes and make them white in the blood of the Lamb and are healed by the leaves from the trees that are growing on each side of the river, waters of life that we just read from Revelation 7, that the Lamb guides the great crowd to. And they're healed during the 1,000 years, as you're going to read in a moment. That's not how the anointed or the Christians who are in New Jerusalem with Jesus are described at all, right? They're totally 100% ready to go and doing everything they need to. But the nations are differentiated from them even during the 1,000 years. So we've seen this very clearly in Matthew 25, all the nations, Christ's brothers. We've seen this very clearly in Revelation 6 and 7, the number of your brothers, 144,000, and the great crowd from all nations, where'd they come from? Well, we know where this group came from. Where'd this group come from? Oh, they come out from the tribulation, just like Matthew 25. Okay, so what's going on here? Let's go back, wrap it up. We're almost done, everyone. Real quick check, make sure no insanity. Okay, good. Looks like everyone's enjoying it. Let's get back to it. We're going to wrap it up here, everyone. Probably another 30 minutes at most. Revelation 20. Verse 1, Revelation 20. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who's the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the bottomless pit, shut him up, and set a seal on him, so that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while. Okay, so this is the start of the 1,000 years, right? Satan is being chained and bound and thrown into the abyss for 1,000 years, and then he's going to be released for a little bit. Verse 4, I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was committed to them. Then I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for their witness to Jesus, just like Revelation 6. Wait just a little while, he said, right? Till the number of your brothers are killed, just as you had been by the sword, for their witness to Jesus and for their word about God, word of God, who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received his mark on their foreheads or on their hands. And they lived and they reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead did not live again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. That is right here. Those who were resurrected. This is the first one. Blessed and holy is he who was part in the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power. But they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him for 1,000 years. So if you're one of these people, whom I believe are the Christians, once you have been sealed, either in death or by being taken away, like Paul describes in 1 Thessalonians 4, that's it. There's no subject to death ever again. But for others, there still is. So let's see what that's about. Now, when the 1,000 years have expired, Satan will be released from his prison and he will go out to deceive the nations, right? That's who can still die, right there. You see that? So we have the group who's reigning with Jesus for 1,000 years. And it says they cannot ever die again. They're not subject to the second death. Then it says Satan gets released. Right earlier it said he wouldn't be able to deceive the nations anymore until the end of the 1,000 years. And then it says the same thing here. He gets out and he deceives the nations, which are in the four corners of the earth, right there. You see that? So there are people on the earth, all over the earth, when Satan is released. It explicitly says, when the 1,000 years expire, Satan comes out and he goes and deceives the nations in the four corners of the earth. That's the nations of Matthew 25. That's the nations of Revelation 7. The great crowd. The sheep who treat Christ's brothers well. And that John doesn't know where they come from, though he's not confused about the others who are mentioned. So then, it's clear Satan is on the earth. There are people on the earth after the 1,000 years, not at the start of it, at the end. He's getting out. So then he goes to deceive them again, right? And remember, who these people are people who are made up of, or entirely, unless there were any descendants during this time, those who weren't fully committed Christians. They were approved because even though they didn't know who were Christians, they were good to them because that's what they were compelled to be, that way out of their own love for goodness and the condition of their heart. That's what Paul probably is speaking about, or in some way that Jesus accepts as like that, where they're a lot of themselves in a way that motivates them to look after him in his persecuted followers during this time. And he rewards them for that. He rewards them for that because that's going to be hard. Anyone who helps a Christian while we're being persecuted by the wild beast, well, they're going to be in harm's way as well, or have been already to this point. If it's been happening this whole time, it's just going to keep happening all the way through the end. Probably get worse. But the point is, those are the nations. And that's exactly the basis upon which Jesus says he's going to accept them into the kingdom. So it makes sense that these aren't the people who can never be subject to the second death. Revelation 20 explicitly limited that to the first resurrection of those who were killed for bearing witness about God and Jesus, not those who were allowed to live because of how they treated Jesus. See, there's a difference, but they're both approved for reasons we can see clearly. But the one group wasn't approved as full committed Christians. That's why they have to have time to heal during the 1,000 years, which we'll get to in a moment. But Satan gets to them once he's released, and then they're tested. Now they're in the same position that the Christians were in, only better. And so if they fail here, they're just not good people, are they? If you fail here after 1,000 years of no demonic activity, but a period of healing and growth, but when the opportunity comes and the dragon is released, and we all know it's no joke, we know he is, that's when you're going to be tested no matter who you are. That's when that great crowd, that's when those sheep are going to be tested. The people who can still die, not the people who can't still die. So if we go right back to it, Satan gathers them together for battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. They went up onto the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the holy ones, the saints, the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. The devil, so they can die. The people who are on the earth during this time, the nations were permitted because of reasons that don't have to do with being a fully committed Christian, but who nonetheless submit themselves to Jesus at that time, wash their robes, and cleanse themselves of their sin through their faith in him, are given a period of healing over which New Jerusalem reigns. The dragon is abyssed, but then the test. That's not the end. Remember, next, the end. In 1 Corinthians 15, remember? Excuse me. We read how he hands over the kingdom at that time. Right? That's when the final enemy, death, has been defeated. After the 1,000 years. So we're like right before he hands the kingdom over. Right? Right here. Because look, these people are about to die. And the last enemy is death. So Jesus is still ruling, technically. It's right at the end of the 1,000 years, right? So it's kind of a little period there of uncertainty. Fire comes down from God out of heaven, devours them. The devil who deceived them, cast in the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Then I saw a great white throne and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, small and great, standing before God, and books were open. Okay, so right here, this is the second resurrection. Remember, the first resurrection was all those who were killed for bearing witness to God and Jesus. And the second death has no hold over them anymore. So this can't be them. They're reigning with Jesus in New Jerusalem. So then we have this great crowd that's on the earth, the nations, this whole 1,000-year period of time, and then Satan's let out and he goes and he starts to deceive them on the earth. And then as they are misled to attack New Jerusalem, however that's done, surround the camp of the holy ones, God destroys them. So we know there's a group of people on the earth who can die during and after the 1,000 years, once they disobey and attack New Jerusalem. Then after they're destroyed, we get this big judgment. The dead, the great, small, and books opened. The book of life. The dead are then judged according to their works by the things which were written in the books. This is John 5, when Jesus says that the hour is coming is now when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God. Those who have given heed will live. There will be those who are resurrected to a resurrection of life, and those who are resurrected to a resurrection of judgment. This is it right here. This is all the dead. And they're all being judged according to what they did. They're not earning salvation here. Jesus is either choosing to give them life based on what they did, i.e., they don't deserve it, but like the nations in Matthew 25, he's going to give it to them anyway, because he's a loving person, and he rewards people who show faith. We don't earn it. He owes us nothing. He's going to give it to us anyway. Isn't that great? But he's going to give it to the people he wants to, and those people are the ones who do good things, right? Who don't do vile things. Like Jesus says in John 5, a resurrection of judgment. The sea gave up those dead in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead in them. Everyone's coming up. And they were judged, each one according to his works. Death and Hades are cast in the lake of fire. This is the second death. So this has nothing to do with the Christians right here. We know that because it said that at the start of this chapter. These ones are resurrected, the first resurrection. Second death has no hold on them. So none of these people here are those Christians who have been brought up from the dead, either those sleeping in death or those who he carries away in 1 Thessalonians 4. None of these people right here in Revelation 20 are Christians. Because the Christians are already still alive. These are all the people who are still dead. These are the Daniel 12 people who will stand up for their part at the end of the days. These are everybody who was not chosen to be a Christian with Jesus, but who is going to be given an opportunity for life in the new heavens and new earth, however they decide. Or who is going to be condemned to death and never to rise again. Look at what it says right here. They were judged individually. This is the second death. Anyone not found written in the book of life is cast into the lake of fire. Right after this, we go straight to Revelation 21. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. First heaven, first earth passed away. There was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. Right there. New heaven, new earth. Okay? This is a promise from Isaiah, 2 Peter, right here in Revelation. Everything fits when you put it in its proper context. And you just accept what is written without adding to it. And you can see right here, it says explicitly, this involves both this and this. New Jerusalem coming down from heaven, and the Christians are in there. And then God and New Jerusalem having association with men. He will dwell with them. They'll be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. God will wipe out every tear from their eyes. There should be no more death, nor sorrow, no crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Then he who sat on the throne said, behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, write, for these words are faithful, true and faithful. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give of the fountain of the water of life freely to him who thirsts. He who overcomes shall inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. What did Jesus say in Revelation 3:12? I will write on him the name of my God, my Father and your Father, my God and your God. No, it's not just talking about him as a man. No, it's talking about him having a God. And that God, who is our God, is going to be the same thing in the future. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all the liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone. This is the second death. The cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, liars, adulterers, right there. You want to make sure you're not in this group of people, okay? As long as you can stay out of this group, you're probably going to be in a good position. You'll be a lot better off, that's for sure. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls filled with the seven last plagues came to me and talked to me, saying, come, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. Her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. Also, she had a great and high wall with 12 gates and 12 angels at the gates, and names written on them, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. Now the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Excuse me. And he who talked with me had a gold reed to measure the city, its gates, its wall, and the city is laid out as a square. Its length is as great as its breadth, and he measured the city with the reed, 12,000 furlongs. Its length, breadth, and height are equal. Then he measured its wall, 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of an angel. Now, isn't that interesting? We again get right here 2 numbers that we saw in Revelation 7. We get 12,000 and we get 144. And they're both being used for dimensions of this city, New Jerusalem, which is where all the Christians are, and which is founded on the apostles. Look, he's measuring this new city that's coming down out of heaven over mankind. And it's 12,000 furlongs. And its wall is 144 cubits. The construction of its wall was jasper, and the city was pure gold, like clear glass. The foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with all kinds of precious stones. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth sardius, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each individual gate was of 1 pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. But I saw no temple. The Greek word is NAOS. Now, in Revelation 7, we saw that word used as well for the place where the great crowd was serving God day and night. And we get a lot of people who believe that the great crowd are actually also Christians and who go to heaven, right? I don't know how they really have no clue what's going on with the earth most of the time. But a lot of them believe the great crowd is in heaven, not just the 144,000. So they try to say, well, where's the temple of God, right? That's the inner sanctuary. Right? That's where God is, in heaven. So they say, well, the great crowd serving God in his temple, that's got to be in heaven. You got to remember, this revelation is not written for most people. And most people have no idea what's going on. You have to be really careful, everybody. Look at all the confusion and false teaching we have out there. Now, we want to make sure we're not that as well, but just be careful, okay? Because you need to not be so convinced by what people say. You really need to take time and study things if they're so important to you that they're like going to wreck your faith or build it. Then you're going to need to do some work, okay? It's not going to be enough just to let one person say something. You just be blown around like wind and wave of the sea, right? So is there a temple or not? No, there isn't, is there? It's explicitly taught right here. And Revelation 7 is describing what happens right here. It literally is describing the great crowd serving God and attributing salvation to him under conditions where it's similar to here, right? The sun doesn't beat down on them. He spreads his tent over them. The language is very similar between Revelation 7 and 21. And so while there's a period of time from the 1,000 years to here, right, where the great crowd in Matthew 25 and Revelation 7, at what point they wash their robes and start serving God in his temple, we don't know, right? Obviously, sometime at or after the start of the 1,000 years, right? But we know they have to heal as well, the Bible says we're going to get to. But at this point, at least, we're at the end. We're right after the 1,000 years right now. Satan's been thrown in the lake of fire. Second death has occurred. And now we have New Jerusalem coming down from heaven and being described in detail. Okay? So here's what it says. It says, there is no temple, because the Lord Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. That's how they're serving him day and night. It doesn't mean they're in heaven. This scene we're reading in Revelation 21 is literally describing New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven onto the earth with mankind. That's exactly what we've been reading to this point. It's coming down out of heaven, and God's going to be with mankind through it. It didn't say those exact words, but that's what it's describing. New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, and God dwelling with men. And it's describing the very city that it just said came down out of heaven. And it says there's no temple other than God himself and the Lamb. So if New Jerusalem is coming down to the earth with men, and I'm going to show you that's definitely what it is doing, do the men on the earth need to be in heaven to serve God in his temple? No, do they? For two reasons. One, there is no temple other than the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb, which are where? Dwelling with the tabernacle of God is with men. He's down here. And so if he is the temple, where's the temple that we serve him in if we're down here? Exactly. Isn't it interesting how people don't know the Bible, everyone? I mean, it's just beyond comprehension, all the confusion the dragons caused. We can sit here and read it, and it's just so clear. Because we're not looking to follow a tradition other than what's written and clearly taught. Most other people are. And they have non-scriptural motivations for doing so. So just know, these things are clear. Don't be confused by other people. You're going to be judged based on what you do and teach, not other people. So we know what this is talking about. There's no temple in heaven that this great crowd is serving in. There's no temple at all. And the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple, and they're with men through New Jerusalem or outside of it, but they're with men. It said it explicitly. The city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, because the glory of God illuminated it. The Lamb is its light, and the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light. These are the nations that are also described in Matthew 25, Revelation 7. And look at what else it says. And the kings of the earth bring their glory and honor into it, the city, where all the Christians are. He will become a pillar in the temple of my God and not go out from it anymore. Revelation 3:12. So, 2 through 12. This is just such good stuff, isn't it? So we know these are kings on the earth. These are nations on the earth. They walk in its light. They're serving God in his temple, which is God himself, as he dwells with them, and New Jerusalem right there with them. The kings of the earth bring their glory and honor into New Jerusalem. Its gates are not shut up at all by day because there's no night there, right there. How do they serve God day and night in his temple? Like Revelation 7 says to the great crowd? Well, there is no temple and there is no day and night. Why? Because God and Jesus are his temple and it's light and there's no night. So guess what? They're serving him day and night in his temple because they're there with him all the time doing what he wants. It all fits, it all makes sense, and we don't need to lie about text to get there. Verse 26, and they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations. Ho-ho! Right there, we have a connection. New heavens and new earth, New Jerusalem coming down with men. We have the nations walking by its light, kings of the earth bringing glory into it. And then we have the glory and honor of the nations being brought into it. Not just the kings, but the nations. But there shall by no means enter it anything that defiles, perverts, or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. Right there. So after the 1,000 years, everyone's brought up from the dead, except all the Christians who are already alive and not subject to the second death. That's us. Everyone else is brought up throughout the whole history of mankind, except us and those who have already just been destroyed with Satan after the end of 1,000 years. Everyone's brought up and judged, John 5. And those who are approved and in the book of life are allowed to live in that new earth as kings and nations and bring the glory of the new earth into New Jerusalem. It all fits, it all makes sense, and it's been there the whole time. Last text, and we're going to wrap it up. This is the end, everyone. Next, the end. Of course, it's not that end, but it will be the end of our live shows for a while. So this is our last series of texts, Revelation 22. Let's read it together. We'll conclude it, and then I will see you again soon. Revelation 22. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the middle of its streets and on either side of the river was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and of the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. And they shall see his face, and his name shall be on their foreheads, like we read about in Revelation 3, and there shall be no night there. They need no lamp, nor light of sun, for the Lord God gives them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. And remember, that's both those ruling with Jesus in New Jerusalem and the kings of the earth. So if you look also, remember, in Revelation 7, remember it said that he guides them and shepherds them, to the great crowd, to fountains of waters of life. Look at what it says. This is exactly what we have here. We have a pure river of water of life flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb on the earth, between all these trees of life, bringing this fruit and these leaves that heal the nations. This is exactly what he's talking about in Revelation 7. And of course, I'm sure he's doing that during the 1,000 years, right? But this includes the people, right? This is actually more than that, because it would include them and the people who have been resurrected and written into the book of life based on what they did. Look, this is the last section and we're done. Then he said to me, these words are faithful and true, and the Lord God of the holy prophets, Yah-oh, sent his angel to show his servants the things which must shortly take place. Behold, I'm coming quickly. Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book. Now I, John, saw and heard these things, and when I heard and saw, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel who showed me these things. Then he said to me, see that you don't do that, for I am a fellow servant and of your brethren, the prophets, and of those who keep the words of this book. Worship God. And he said to me, do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. He who was unjust, let him be unjust still. He was filthy and a pig. Let him be a filthy pig still. He was righteous, let him be righteous still. And he was holy, let him be holy still. Now, we just saw there as well that John, who knew an angel was showing him these things, was so overwhelmed, he started to worship at the feet of the angel. I've explained this to you guys before. Some people still seem confused. And if you just don't get it, that's just the way it is. I don't know why you'd be confused, though, because it's literally right in front of you. So he tells them, he says he worshiped before the feet of the angel. He's not saying he's worshiping God or worshiping God through the angel. He's worshiping the angel. Why is he doing that? Well, look, because the angel is talking exactly like God, right? I'm coming quickly, or Jesus. Both say these things and are represented as doing them. But John doesn't continue to, he starts to see it as this angel. Okay? And remember, all throughout Revelation, we've had these different angels. We've had these angels holding back four winds. We've had this angel with the seal of the living God. We had the strong angel with a great chain. So John's seeing all these powerful angels. He's got this angel talking just like Jesus and God. Because that's what they're there. That's what angels do, right? And instead of accepting that the angel is representing Jesus or God, he starts to worship the angel. So the angel stops him and says, don't do that. So then the angel immediately resumes what? Talking like Jesus and God, right? I am coming quickly. It has it even in red, right? This is the same angel. There's been no change here. Then he said to me, right? He said to me. There's no change. This is all artificial. These quotes ending here and starting here and then the red here. This is all the same angel talking. There's no break at all anywhere here. This is the type of problem you get with these Bibles. They're interpreting the Bible for you, and they usually screw it up. They certainly do here, right? So they create this artificial break in who's talking when it's just the angel talking the whole time. Look, he was starting to say what he says here. Behold, I am coming quickly. That's the first part of what he was just about to say, right? But then John starts to worship him. So he starts to say it again. Behold, I'm coming quickly. My reward is with me to give to everyone according to his work. I'm the Alpha and the Omega, beginning and end, first and last. Blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs and sorcerers and sexually immoral perverts and murderers and statue and icon lovers and whoever loves and practices a lie. That is your number one concern and threat. Lies. That is the number one thing you need to be on alert for. That is the thing that will destroy you. Cowardice too and all these things, but the lie is what you have to stand up to. When you know someone's lying and you know people are being hurt by it, well, that's where the cowardice comes in, right? It's not like you're just always running from a fight. You don't have the courage to do what's right. And while we all fail there sometimes, right? Even Peter failed there. He denied Jesus, right? But he didn't keep doing it. You can fail, that's normal. What's not normal is continuing to fail your whole life. That's not normal. No, even if at the very end, like the thief who died with Jesus, the evildoer, you finally get it right, good for you. It's not normal to do what the other thief did and to just collapse into bitterness and garbage when you got nothing left. Didn't even have the common sense to have some faith. But when you never cultivate anything, you don't have anything when you need it. The lie is what the dragon used to cause all of this, and what he uses to cause it all is what he uses to destroy people's lives, destroy families, blaspheme God, and steal praise for himself. The lie is the most wicked thing, unless you want to say love for money. I don't recommend either one. But watch out for the lie, because it's everywhere. And people have a hard time standing up against it because they think people are good. Remember? It's hard to tell a good person, hey, you're lying. Oh, but when you remember no one's good, it becomes all of a sudden a lot easier, doesn't it? Yeah, you might hurt some feelings, but guess what? They're lying to you. They don't care about your feelings at all. They care about whether you submit to their will so they feel better about themselves and or steal your money. One of the two. Either they want you to agree with them for the benefit of a group mentality that makes them feel better because you agree and the shared mentality just has that effect, or they want something from you. And if you're not going to give them either one of those, some kind of monetary benefit, or at least the shared satisfaction that you agree with their false doctrine, they won't love you or like you at all. I guarantee it. And the ones that do and who respect you for disagreeing with them and not just going along so that other people feel better and you don't, the ones who actually aren't trying to take something from you will respect that. And you just might plant a seed where you didn't expect. If you don't do anything, don't expect anything. I, Jesus, sent my angel to testify to you these things in the churches. I'm the root and offspring of David, the bright morning star and morning star. So as we know, Revelation 1:1, God sent Jesus. He gave him this revelation, who then gave it to other angels, and then gave it to John, who gave it to the Christians, the congregations, the people living in that time who needed help. They were under attack. They were constantly being persecuted and threatened by the dragon. And then you had all these weeds grow up and hide the wheat. And the dragon was able to use all kinds of things, not just later, but in the first century, all over the place. Greeks, Jews, Romans, persecute people. The Christians in the Bible and in the sources soon thereafter, like Pliny the Younger, tell us they kept it really simple. They didn't have all these big church buildings. Okay. They met together in small groups, usually in homes, and they agreed not to violate things that were immoral. They praised God and Jesus, and they agreed to carry on the traditions of the apostles, not go beyond what's written. So today, we have all these groups, right? All these people claiming to be Christian. And yet we know the Master says there is a broad road that leads to destruction and a narrow road that leads to life. And few find that road. Okay, I may have okay. So I answered your question, Charles. Okay, good. It shouldn't surprise us that we're going to be outnumbered. This isn't our world. These people don't like us. If they liked us, we would be like them, right? They'd be fond of their own. We want respect and we want to get along to the extent we can. But the Bible is very clear, is it not? We have to leave people alone. We have to let others make decisions. Because what did we read? That's how we're going to be judged, according to your deeds. You're not going to earn it, but he's going to use that as a basis for whether or not he likes you, right? You don't think they care that who they like matters? Oh, it sure does, because they don't have to give us anything. They just do, because they can see what they want to see in us. It's not an earning. It's a choice they make on their own. But they're responding to things that we're doing. We just don't earn it by those things we do. Last text, I told you, Romans 13. We're not going to read a lot, just a little. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities. There's no authority except by God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God. And those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. So we're not here to create problems in society, uprisings and rebellions. We're here to live our life, be peaceable with everyone to the extent possible, just like the Bible says. With some people, it's not possible. So you better watch yourself, do the best you can with what you have, and try to avoid people that aren't going to allow you to be peaceable, unless you have really good reason for engaging them. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid. For he does not bear the sword in vain. He is God's minister. Talking about the authorities. An avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore you must be subject, not only because of wrath, but for conscience sake. For because of this you also pay taxes. For they're God's ministers, attending continually to this very thing. Render therefore to all their due. Taxes to whom taxes are due. Customs to whom customs. Fear to whom fear. Honor to whom honor. Remember what I said earlier? We have to become all things to all people without compromising, crossing the line that we can't go back on. Right here, customs to customs. We got to be as accommodating as we can without compromising. Remember that. Owe no one anything except to love one another. For he who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, all are summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Right there. It's all right there, right? Just like the master said. Golden rule, love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. We're not talking about wolves, okay? There's a difference between loving your enemy like the Romans who didn't know any better and the Jews whom he didn't ask God to forgive and who were destroyed because they did. Make the distinction or it could not be good. And do this, knowing the time that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now our salvation is nearer than when we first believed. The night is far spent, the day at hand. Therefore let us cast off the works of darkness. Let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk properly as in the day, not in revelry and drunkenness, not in lewdness and lust, not in strife and envy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill its lusts. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to have those kind of problems like we were reading earlier. Cut your foot off, cut your hand off, if that's what you got to do. Although we're not talking about that literally. We're just saying stop the means by which you're killing yourself, okay? Cut it off. Stop going there. Stop touching it. Stop looking at it. Last part. Let your love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is wicked. Cling to good. Be kindly affectionate with each other, brotherly love and honor, giving preference, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, distributing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality. I'm trying to find one part. Maybe I'm looking for 14. I think it's 14. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is the part I was wanting to get to next. Right, so receive the one who's weak in faith, but not to dispute over doubtful things, right? So sometimes we get people, they've been studying the Bible for years, right? I still have questions. That's not someone who's weak in the faith. They just don't believe, right? They've had plenty of time, plenty of opportunity. They're not responding. Sometimes there are people who are just weak, and we need to help them because, like I was saying earlier, they get all this confusion, all these voices. They don't know how to proceed. Well, but it says right here, people who are weak, it's not to start disputing over doubtful things. We're not here to make decisions for you. When you're weak, that just means we're supposed to give you more space to figure it out. You're supposed to figure this out, You're not supposed to be looking to other people to tell you what to do. Maybe to help a little bit, but unless you just don't have the means to understand, you just haven't taken the time and you're lazy. Okay, that's not good. You're not supposed to do that. So, but if you're weak in faith because you have doubts or you've gone through difficulty, that's fine. We will help you. Not to argue though. Okay, this isn't a place to come and you're like, I don't know what to believe, so can you answer all my questions about the Trinity, right? No, that's not what he's talking about at all. One who believes may eat all things, but one who's weak eats only vegetables. Let not him who eats despise him who does not eat, and let not him who does not eat judge him who eats. Remember we were talking about earlier, despising these little ones? It's the same thing. He's saying you're just not supposed to have a mental attitude against them. You're not supposed to be thinking against people. Okay, what did Paul say? Or we read last week, it says, people who grumble against others are condemned. If you're with any other people and you're grumbling about other Christians, you are condemned. You might as well just kill yourself, right? No, I'm kidding. But what are you doing? You're killing yourself when you do that. Who are you? It says right here, you're not to dispute people who are weak. You're just supposed to leave them alone. Don't despise them for what they're doing. Who are you to judge another's servant? To his own master he stands or falls. In other words, leave them alone. They'll either stand or they'll fall. You get it now? You don't have to hold people's hands all the time. Where's that text? No, we help, we comfort. But if they're just weak, let them figure it out until they get stronger. We're not the ones who make them grow. We plant, we water. That's it. So there's no, you're supposed to make this person grow or get over their doubts. No. We just leave them alone and don't judge them. One person esteems one day above another. Another esteems every day the same. Let each be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it to the Lord. He who does not observe the day to the Lord, he does not observe it. He who eats, eats to the Lord. For he who gives God thanks. For he gives God thanks. And he who does not eat to the Lord does not eat and gives God thanks. For none of us lives to himself, and no one dies to himself. If we live to the Lord. If we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and rose and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the dead and living. But why do you judge your brother? Why do you show contempt for your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. As I live, says Yahweh, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God in the name of Jesus as Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So then, last text. So then each of us shall give an account of himself to God. You're not answering for anyone else. No one is going to ask you about anybody else when that day comes. And everyone's going to have that day, okay? Whether you were good or bad, you're going to have your day. You're going to stand before the one whose spirit you chose to use however you did. And he's going to come back for that spirit. And he's going to ask you what you did. You're going to give an account for yourself. Therefore, let us not judge one another anymore, but rather resolve this, not to put a stumbling block or a cause to fall in our brother's way. In other words, you got to go out of your way to shut the hell up, okay? You see someone who's weak in faith and they're not eating what you eat, you shut your mouth. You see someone who's doing things that you don't do, shut the mouth. That's how you help people. By not trying to help them so much. We don't need your help. We don't answer for you. You don't answer for me. You know who you need to help? You. You need to get your shit together, okay? If you're in Watchtower and you're letting these people dictate to you what to believe and destroy your family, you got to do stuff, okay? You got to get out of there. Now, does that mean like you leave immediately and just rip the Band-Aid off? And I don't know. I know they're lying to you. Is that okay? Are you okay with that? Same with the Catholics. Same with the Eastern pagans. Same with all these Protestant groups. Okay, if they're teaching these councils and creeds, they're lying to you. Are they all bad people? Probably not. No one's good. I'll tell you that. But we also know that there's a dragnet been let down, and the master will decide those things. It's not for us to decide any of these things. We can barely decide what to do each day. And yet everyone's running around telling people what to believe, or they're not going to associate with them, right? Who are you? You know how much horrible stuff you've done today and did yesterday and are going to do tomorrow? And you're going to what? Try to tell people what to do? To make you feel better? How about this? How about we'll all just try to do what's right and please the master? And if anyone doesn't like it, we'll just shut up, okay? And unless you're a pig-faced fatso who gets up here and lies about God, the Bible, punches his wife in the face and rapes her, and gets up for 10 years while his buddy's covering for him and makes us look like a disgrace, blasphemes God, blasphemes the Bible, blasphemes everybody and their mothers. Yeah, you see someone like that, you need to get angry. Yeah, there's a time for anger. Have you ever read how Samuel hacked Eglon to pieces in front of Yael to appease him? He was so angry at Saul not listening because of the way they killed his people. Yeah, you better get angry. It's time for anger. That's the only thing that's going to help you make a decision, because the devil has cut most of your dicks off. The devil has intentionally effeminized many people so that you can't even stand up to liars anymore, even though you have an example right there in the Bible of Ephesian Christians doing that very thing with the Lord's approval in the first century. So I don't know what it's going to take to motivate some of you. I think some of you are just not going to react to what you should be reacting to. And that's okay. You get to choose that. But if you're like me and you want to choose to stand up to pigs, fatzos, and liars, even if you don't always do it perfectly, but when you do it, you make it clear to everybody, oh, you guys, I know what you do. You guys are the worst people out there, and you deserve every single bit of it and more. The fact that these idiot Protestants failed to take down Fat Sam and his abuse and rape and fagness isn't going to stop us. You're finished, fatso. The more you get up here and blaspheme God and the Bible, the more I'm going to smack your ass down until you're finished. And your fat is just something we laugh about. In the history of your perverted behavior on this planet and your disgusting teaching and faggotry, the Christian witnesses of Jah will never yield to these pigs and blimps. And we're going to stand up to every committed liar and dragon fag that's out there. We're not afraid of you. Can't do anything to us anymore. Those days are over, and your days are coming to an end. When that end comes, Master will let us know. Until then, we've got some fat to fry, everybody. And we've got some pigs, blimps, and fatzos who are blaspheming my God and your God. And that means they're blaspheming the Messiah's Father and the Messiah's God. Now, how you feel about that, I'm going to leave up to you. I'm going to let you think about that for a few months. And I'm going to go my way and become an even better servant of one God the Father, Jah, and his Son. And I will return, Jah willing, in several months to see how you've all been doing. I don't encourage you to waste a lot of time with these idiotic fag channels. The less you support them with views, clicks, whatever, the better. They ignore us because they know if they give us attention, there's nothing better coming their way. Just more destruction. So let them have their day. This is it for them, everyone. They're finished. So we're going to let them go. So if we don't have, you got to speak in the language we use here, or you got to go. Okay? Sorry. Just use regular, or otherwise I don't know what you're saying. So that's not appropriate. You need to, again, everybody, there are people out here who just don't have basic sense of common sense for getting along and being a Christian. You need to be really careful who you choose to associate with. I would encourage you to avoid almost every Christian you can, everyone who claims to be a Christian, unless they're like you. Okay, they're worshiping one God the Father, following Jesus, sent for Savior, and the Golden Rule. They're teaching this Trinitarian crap, this Unitarian nonsense, or anything but what the Bible teaches and the gospel of the apostles and their Jesus. Just leave them alone. Don't shun them or be mean to them. Just don't engage them. Unless you really want to. Okay, don't come to me. I'm not interested in helping you anymore. If you haven't learned by now what to do, I can't help you. It's all there. I've done more than enough. And you didn't even need that. But people claiming to be Christian and who hold these false beliefs and who blaspheme Jesus, they're not going to listen. Okay? Maybe, I mean, the odds are very low. They already have the Bible. They've already read it. They've already had an exposure to the Father and the Son. And he didn't help them understand. All they're trying to do is confuse you and teach what the dragon has presented as this Christian brand. So engaging all these fake Christians is probably the worst use of your time you could do. Now, for people like the big pig blasphemer and his fag friends, for those of you who are like me and you're already like you've been involved with this, or you have a really strong calling to expose these pigs like Paul tells us and like Jesus did, and you don't mind aggressive engagement to get that done because you understand the Son and you're not here to judge people like a little bitch, then keep developing that stick with me and we'll take down these pigs, okay? They're not going to stick around. We're going to give them a little time, let them shine, and then we're going to bring them crashing down, okay? Don't you worry. For the rest of you, you shouldn't even worry about this stuff. Focus on the things we were talking about this whole show. Focus on the things that are going to make you a better person, happier, and they're going to help the children, okay? Don't add burdens to people. Sometimes you just have to leave them alone. Remember what Paul just said? Leave them alone. Let them make their own decision. As long as they're not violating 1, 2, or 3, God, Jesus, you or me, and sinned against you or me in a way that Matthew 18 needs to be brought up, leave them alone. Help them to grow if they're a good person and trying. If they're a committed Christian to fake gods and false doctrine, unless you're like me and you're committed to exposing pigs and fatzos, let them go. You're likely not going to change their mind anyway, and they already know. Find the ones that don't know. Remember how we were talking about the kids earlier? They need more help than these perverts, right? These people are listening to Sam. These fags are literally platforming the biggest perverted fag on the planet. The guy who was literally exposed for punching his wife in the face and giving her a black eye and covering it up for 10 years. And raping her. While he was a Christian minister. Okay, this wasn't in a transition period or nothing. This was after he got her to leave her first husband. And he's their big hero out here. This is your king? This is your champion, huh? Well, fags like Fearless Truth seem to think so. They platform a known rapist and wife beater. Well, what does that make you, pig? Makes you a fag wife beater supporter and a blasphemous idiot like him, your teacher. That's where you learned all your shit anyway. All these little fags running around with this perverted pig face and his fake God's teaching. Can you believe this shit, everybody? Don't you forget this, because I won't forget this. And if you think the Father has forgotten this pig and his blasphemy and all these lies and faggotry, you're crazy. He cares about it more than anybody. But we also care about a lot more, don't we? So let me handle these fags and these spiritual wolves and perverts. And you tell other people exactly what we're doing. You explain exactly what kind of people these are. Show them the picture of Sam's ex-wife with a black eye and all these things that he's done. This is their great champion who got raped and sodomized live himself before he killed himself. Yeah, some champion. So everybody, this game is over. Let them keep playing while you guys know it's over. Let's keep growing. Get stronger. Become more faithful. Help the children. And I will be back to help you do all of those things again sooner than you think. And before you know it, we'll be back live again, talking about God, Jesus, how can we become better people? And yes, we will expose pigs, fatzos, and liars. Did you read the end of Revelation 22? And who it said wouldn't be in the city with me and you? Revelation 21, 22 both said, cowards, perverts, abominations, liars, gone, right? That's all these guys do is lie. They ignore arguments and they just keep recycling already defeated arguments. They're pigs and liars. They know what they're doing. They're worse than unbelievers. They don't even work and support their own family. It's over, right? So everybody be pumped up, be excited. Do not judge people, especially if we're standing pigs, fatzos, and liars. That's what they want you to do. They want to cause division. When they're in schism, they've been fractured to the core. It's over. We are now rising more. Let them keep thinking. Let them keep exposing themselves with their own stupidity. They're not showing anything new here. And everybody's getting to see that every one of these groups sanctioned the biggest pig on the planet. And he sodomized and raped them, including his own wife. And only did they turn on him when he didn't have any more use for him. And these fags are still putting him up there. This pig can't even watch more than a 10-minute video. And he had to have someone tell him about that. Although he showed parts of it, didn't he? He just ignored it all. So he is a disgrace in every way, in every category. Proverbs 18:13. They still jump on his penis, even though it doesn't work anymore, because it's been cursed, just like he is. And everyone like him, just like we read in Revelation. So don't feel bad about any of it. Why should you? Are you staying up for the master? Have you denied the master's name? Good. I'm with you. That's what these people are doing. So get the hell away from them, or expose them like we do. Because these are some of the worst people on the planet, and they deserve it. Times 2.